High above the Arctic Circle, on a thin layer of sea ice, an American sports hunter shoots what he believes is a polar bear. He is mistaken.
I could see he was white, but I couldn't tell that he was what he was.
It's something that I've never experienced, and that's one thing that I'll never forget.
The killing unleashes an investigation.
He's looking at me like I was a criminal already.
No one can tell exactly what he has shot.
I wasn't convinced from the beginning of what it was.
The hunter, under threat of prosecution for a crime he says he didn't commit.
I wasn't out there trying to kill an illegal bear.
Scientists pore over the corpse of an animal they've never seen before.
We knew that there was definitely something unique.
With each new discovery, the mystery deepens.
This is the single sample that aroused the most curiosity.
Their target is to discover the exact species of this animal. It begins as the adventure of a lifetime for Jim Martell, a businessman from Glens Ferry, Idaho.
I've been hunting since I was about 8 years old. And first 20 years of my marriage, I couldn't do this kind of thing, which now I'm almost too old to do it.
Hunting polar bears for sport is illegal in the United States. So 65-year-old Martell pays an Inuit guide, Roger Kuptana, $25,000 to go on a hunt in Canada. Both are unaware that they will end up hunting something else entirely.
We thought we were going out just for a regular polar bear.
The Inuit are allowed to sell 14 such hunts every 12 months. And during the last 45 years, Kuptana has hunted all over the 27,000 square mile Banks Island.
Thousands and thousands of years ago, my ancestors, they learned how to hunt polar bear. It can be dangerous, but that's the type of thing we do here. That's our livelihood.
Although Martell is an experienced hunter, this trip is different from anything he's taken on before.
We had a great time planning the trip. I think I packed 3 times and unpacked 3 times to make sure I had the right gear for the climate. You know, you become a kid again.
Despite the careful planning, this is an adventure loaded with danger. The polar bear is the world's largest land predator, and the only species of bear known to deliberately target humans. Standing on its hind legs, it could look an elephant in the eye. With an average weight of up to 1,500 pounds, they pack enormous power. And they can charge at speeds faster than most humans. Arctic expedition organizer Boyd Warner knows the dangers of a polar bear hunt. Warner has over 30 years' experience working in the wilderness of the North.
I've lived in the North all my life, and I wouldn't go out there without an Inuit guide that really knows how to survive in that land. Too much can happen too fast, and when it happens, it's serious.
In order to hunt legally, Martell purchases a $50 permit from the Northwest Territories government.
Once he's got that license and he's got the metal tag and paid for it, yes, he's legal entitled to hunt in Northwest Territories.
But the permit is only for a polar bear. A polar bear hunt can take up to 2 weeks, requiring up to 12 hours travel a day in the back of a bone-shaking sled, facing life-threatening conditions.
You have to be alert at all times. I've seen it get maybe minus 80 degrees Celsius, with the wind chill.
Doesn't matter how much money you have at that point. It's all about this guide keeping you alive, because that's all that's going to keep you alive.
With the wind hitting, it can really affect your judgment at times.
The two men travel on a 3-foot thick layer of frozen sea, raked by Arctic winds.
It aches in a matter of seconds. So you just don't uncover your skin at all. But you do shiver all the time. I had a stocking cap, goggles, everything to keep from getting frostbite.
Martell finds the adventure far harder than he expected. After 3 days in the sled, there is no sign of a polar bear. "75 miles away from the sanctuary of Sachs Harbor, out on the frozen sea off Nelson Head, he takes refuge. While Martell rests, Kaptana keeps watch for any sign of a polar bear. At first light, the Inuit guide wakes his client. He has spotted movement on a ridge to the north.
It was about 5 o'clock in the morning.
Hey, Jim.
Hadn't had our breakfast or anything yet, but he came and said, "Do you want to go after it on foot?" And I said, "Oh, sure." So I got up and in a hurry, got dressed, got my rifle, and put on white clothes, and then went after it.
Leaving their dogs behind, Kaptana and Martell, without radios or any other means of contact, set out on foot.
He told me he's about 2 miles away.
The men take the long way round to surprise the bear.
The only way we could get at him was if we could track him as quietly as possible. Then I knew we had a chance.
To keep downwind, Martell and Kaptana head west, across rougher terrain.
But you step here.
It took us about an hour. We walked real slow getting over there because, you know, the snow is crunchy and a little noisy.
Just 300 yards south of the ridge, Kaptana sees the bear moving.
At that point,
Get ready.
the adrenaline is flowing. I could see he was getting ready to make a run for it.
That's when Roger said, "Shoot."
Shoot.
He didn't hesitate, so I didn't either.
Both men can see the bear fall.
I got him. He said that was a great shot. 300-yard shot's a pretty good shot, offhand, with no rest. I was pretty sure that it was a kill shot.
The two men approach the bear.
As we got closer, like 50 yards, it started to look a little bit different, you know.
Once we got within 50 feet, then Roger said, "Well, wait right here. I'm going to check it out."
Like anything else, you've got to take risk.
The bear appears to be dead.
I thought he was dead. He looked dead, but they'll play possum sometime.
He approached him from behind to make sure he was not alive. Then he said, "Come on up," and then I did. But I stood there with the rifle in case it did, come alive.
Live or dead, this is not what they had expected to find.
I could see that he was a little bit of a different bear. But at that point, I wasn't quite sure what kind of a polar bear he was.
He brushed off the snow off of his face and his back.
The animal is certainly dead, but this is unlike any bear the Inuit guide has ever seen. Martell hands Kaptana his camera. This polar bear has dark rings around its eyes and an abnormal hump on its back.
It's something that I've never seen before on a polar bear.
Whatever this is, it does not appear to be a normal polar bear.
He got really excited. He knew before anybody that that was a different kind of bear.
Miles south of Banks Island, an agent travels to pick up American sports hunter Jim Martell. On a remote airstrip, Martell is returning with the bloody remains of the strange polar bear he shot near Sachs Harbor. All hunters have to prove to the territorial government that the animal they've shot corresponds with their permit.
We're here basically to enforce, make sure everybody's within terms of the conditions of their license.
If Martell has anything in the crate other than a polar bear, he will be cited for breaking the law.
Our job is to basically make sure everything's legal.
Nine days earlier, on Banks Island, Inuit Roger Kaptana had skinned the bear.
You roll him back over on the skin, and then skin the other side off. You kind of peel it off of him like you do a banana, actually.
Martell wanted the skin as his trophy, and needed other body parts to meet legal requirements.
We take the hide off the carcass itself and take the head off.
But the shape of the head is unusual for a polar bear.
The head was slightly larger than a polar bear.
Although Kaptana had done this more than 90 times, he'd never seen flesh this color before.
The meat itself seemed to be a little bit lighter than a polar bear, you know.
The carcass and guts are left behind. Martell and Kaptana take the bear's skin, its skull, and two small bones.
Those are the things that are required to bring back.
On the mainland, the government's officers immediately begin to examine the bear's body parts in the lab.
So we do take that hide and we do examine it.
We'll remove a post-canine tooth. We'll measure the bear. We'll take biological samples.
They determine this animal is a 7-foot 1-inch male bear. But no one, including the biologist in Inuvik, Marcia Brannigan, is certain what kind of bear.
I wasn't convinced from the beginning what it was.
One thing is certain. They don't believe that what Martell has brought back is a normal polar bear. Martell is required to explain himself.
He said, "You need to come in my office," and he was going to fill out my testimony of this hunt.
They're required under law to provide information.
I went in and explained what had happened, you know, as far as shooting this animal. And he said, "We're going to have this animal tested, or you're going to be fined."
Martell is at risk of a $1,000 fine, a small amount for a successful businessman. But more devastating than a fine is a criminal conviction and a tarnished reputation as a hunter. The officers have never encountered anything like this before. From their visual inspection, they surmise this is not a polar bear. Martell is accused of illegal possession of wildlife.
I got mad when I was in the office, and I finally had to kind of barked back at him, and then he calmed down a little bit.
Feels comfortable to which way he knows.
The officers are unyielding. They've never seen a polar bear with brown rings around its eyes.
Hunting.
It wasn't looking like a polar bear. I've never seen a polar bear with any kind of brown markings on it, period.
Government officers conduct further tests to determine the species of the bear. They cut off samples of flesh and hair, and then impound the skin into storage.
They had rolled it up, and they confiscated it and kept it. And so I was kind of angry.
Martell is permitted to go, but the investigation continues. The flesh and hair samples are sent to Wildlife Genetics International in Nelson, British Columbia. Here, DNA analyst Dr. David Paco and his team are assigned to unlock its genetic code.
It was really pretty simple instructions, just document the species status of the sample.
This sample, however, is different.
It did look kind of weird. It was a strange color, but more of an orange with quite a bit of blonde at the end. So right away it was kind of strange.
The team uses police forensic techniques to determine the species of the bear.
We didn't really know what to think at first. We knew that they wanted a turnaround time. It was pretty quick, so we just started immediately. They were really concerned.
The team first tries to match the DNA from this sample to the DNA from other polar bears. Because this bear had been shot on a remote Arctic island, they immediately assume this sample is from a polar bear.
They had expected it to assign to a polar bear, but when I got the first analysis done, I kind of went, oh, uh-oh. It just didn't assign to a polar bear.
Meanwhile, rumors that the animal found on Banks Island is not a polar bear are traveling fast throughout the isolated community of Sachs Harbor.
A lot of people were surprised because no one's expected to see anything like this. It's abnormal.
When the Inuvik authorities released the bear's skin on May the 10th, and it arrives in Yellowknife at the workshop of taxidermist Greg Robertson, he too is intrigued by what he finds. Robertson has won many awards for his work over 20 years in business. He's worked on over 600 bears, but has never seen one like this.
And we were kind of surprised when we got it that it was something totally different. I think the biggest thing for me was the odor. Polar bear has a very oily type of fishy smell to it.
Polar bears are carnivores. Their main diet is seal, and their flesh usually smells of seal.
This didn't have that at all.
Robertson could smell something mustier. This observation matches Jim Martell and Roger Kaptana's when they'd skinned the bear on Banks Island.
Roger wanted to see what the bear was eating. So he opened him up.
Kaptana began to cut into the animal's intestines.
He just opened him up and was looking through everything that was in there.
As I cut it open, I saw bits and pieces of seal and something I didn't really quite recognize. I didn't know whether it was rodent-like or what.
You could see furry particles that was in there. It must have been a ground squirrel or something.
Seals are a common part of a polar bear's diet. Ground squirrels are not. However, they are a common food source for the grizzly bear. Could this bear, in fact, be a grizzly? When Martell is interviewed at the government building in Inuvik, he declares he shot a polar bear, albeit an unusual one. But the officers believe he shot a grizzly.
The officers like looking at me like I was a criminal. He said, "You got a grizzly?" I said, "No, I don't. I got a polar bear." He said, "You know, there is white grizzlies." I said, "No, I never seen a white grizzly in my life."
Another name for the grizzly bear is brown bear. They are typically brown in color with silver tips on the ends of their hair, giving them a grizzled appearance. Though infrequently seen, blonde-colored grizzlies have been previously found and photographed in the wild. It seems likely to government biologist Marcia Brannigan that the bear shot by Martell was one of these.
I've captured really blonde grizzlies. We just assumed it was a blonde grizzly.
Is it possible that what Martell had shot is a blonde grizzly? Grizzly bears are found across vast areas of mainland Canada, but normally they don't travel beyond the north coast. South of the coastline are the resources they need to thrive. Why would grizzlies venture north, away from land, towards a barren, treeless wilderness like Banks Island, some 300 miles off the Canadian coast? Government biologist Marcia Brannigan had a theory.
They're bare ground grizzlies. They live out on the open tundra, so it's not, that much different up on Banks than it is on the mainland. Grizzly bears are omnivores. They'll eat anything. If they can find something to eat, they'll eat it. They likely could find something to eat up there.
The authorities believe a blonde grizzly could have made its way north, over the frozen sea onto Banks Island, in search of food. In 2003, a lone grizzly bear had been found on Melville Island, another 100 miles north of Banks Island. This is the furthest north a grizzly bear had ever been documented. It seems plausible to Brannigan that a grizzly could be found on Banks Island.
It's not normal territory for them. It's rare, but it's not unheard of.
Martell is adamant he had no intention of breaking the law.
I wasn't out there trying to kill an illegal bear.
Martell feels he's the victim of a miscarriage of justice and maintains he shot a polar bear.
When you pay the kind of money you pay to go polar bear hunting, you don't shoot something else.
When taxidermist Greg Robertson tries to choose a frame for the animal's skin in Yellowknife, neither a polar nor a grizzly shape will fit.
The shape was similar to a grizzly. Had a skull, looked like a grizzly, but the fur shape of a polar bear, basically. Never seen that before.
Robertson doesn't alter the shape or size of the skin. Yet as he tries to fit it to the frame, the differences mount up.
The length of the neck, the size of the neck had to be altered, and the head had a lot of alterations to it.
The skin is not only the wrong shape, but also much longer than a normal grizzly's.
We've mounted a lot of grizzlies. We have yet to mount one 7.5, 8 feet.
In British Columbia, geneticist David Peku and his team worked to make sense of the sample of hair and flesh taken from the bear.
This is the single sample that has aroused the most curiosity with everyone standing around the computer monitor.
The lab is under great pressure to deliver the DNA results. Unable to find a perfect match for a pure polar bear, they begin to look at other possibilities. There are 8 species of bear, but only 3 that are native to North America: the polar, the grizzly, and the black bear.
We had reference data from polar bears, grizzly bears, black bears. It was definitely far different from a black bear.
Black bears have a markedly different DNA profile.
Any proportion of black bear would stand out like a sore thumb, whereas polar bears and brown bears are much more closely related.
If it isn't a black bear, and pure polar has already been ruled out, there is only one possibility left. But it seems doubtful to the scientists. Their analysis would prove this bear is a grizzly.
They've assured me that indeed that would have been weird to have a grizzly bear up there.
Yet as the results come in, it becomes clear there are elements of grizzly DNA in the sample.
There's some element of surprise. Oh, we were pretty excited.
Given this evidence, the original accusation Martell had killed something other than a polar bear would still seem valid. American hunter Jim Martell stands accused of shooting an illegal bear. When he fired his rifle on April the 16th, 2006, Martell was 300 yards away from the bear.
I knew where I was aiming. I aimed right for the lung cavity, right behind the front shoulder.
With the benefit of his rifle sight, Martell had a clear view of the bear.
I could see he was white and everything.
Shoot.
My guide told me to shoot it, and I shot it.
Martell's Inuit guide, Roger Kuptana, had also had a clear sight of the bear.
When I originally saw it from 300 yards, I was sure it was a pure polar bear.
Martell is not the only one potentially in trouble.
The hunter ultimately is responsible, but in this case, because it's an outfitted hunt, the outfitter also, Roger, would have been potentially facing charges.
Warner has studied grizzlies' behavior on the Canadian mainland for over 30 years, and it seems unlikely to him this bear would ever prove to be a grizzly.
The bears don't come out of hibernation on the mainland until often about May 10th.
The temperature on Banks Island is, on average, 10 degrees colder than on the nearest mainland coast.
The time of year this bear was shot in the conditions, grizzly wouldn't have been out at that time of year.
If this was a grizzly bear, and it was so far north, it wouldn't come out of its winter den until late May. But this bear was shot on April the 16th, at least a month earlier. Warner believes it's unlikely Martell could have shot a grizzly bear on April the 16th. At the Wildlife Genetics Lab in Nelson, the DNA team need to be 100% certain about their results.
We knew we had to do as many tests as we could so that people didn't have those kinds of questions.
The government's case against Martell rests on their analysis. By doing more tests, they're sure their findings are accurate.
We're absolutely certain. There's no way that that genotype that we got for that piece of skin came from a polar bear or a grizzly bear. Where it gets trickier is saying what it did come from.
Adding more data didn't bring it closer to one or the other. It just confirmed that it was neither.
The sample is not a perfect match to either species. The bear shot on Banks Island is neither a pure polar nor a pure grizzly. Although they hold off releasing their findings as they continue their analysis, this discovery would make the government authorities' position that the bear is a blonde grizzly no longer tenable. But Martell and Kuptana are not off the hook. Martell's permit was for a polar bear, and this is clearly not a pure polar bear. After 45 years living in polar bear territory, Kaptana believes there is still much to learn about the bears of the Arctic, and especially about this bear.
It could be considered a new species, yeah.
He thinks that information is scarce in spite of modern technology.
Even with helicopters and aircraft, the scientists have a hard time keeping track of all the bears that we have.
Biologists monitor any polar bears they can find on Banks Island by tagging them with GPS locators.
About 95% of the bears we get are not tagged, so that indicates that they're missing a great deal of information out there.
Perhaps this bear is one example of a new undiscovered species.
We knew that there was definitely something unique. The back feet were odd. This had a large pad in the front and a large pad in the back with about an inch or an inch and a half band of fur separating the two right across, which is unusual in any species of bear.
Neither grizzly nor polar bears have two large pads on their hind feet. If this bear is so unusual, could it be one example of a new species, combining both polar and grizzly bear? James Mallet is Professor of Biological Diversity at University College, London.
I think it's very unlikely there's a new bear species out there, mainly because people have hunted there. And there's been a fur trade for hundreds of years, and people would have noticed it if it had been there.
It seems unlikely an entirely new species of bear would survive undiscovered. In Yellowknife, taxidermist Robertson is convinced what he is seeing is evidence of something unique.
The unusual thing to me was its claws. They were basically in between the size of a grizzly bear and a polar bear. He had sort of a combination between the two.
The 5 claws of a polar bear are thick, short, and sharp, adapted for efficient traction on ice. Whereas those of a grizzly bear are long and curved, critical for excavating dens or digging for food. The claws of this animal merge all these characteristics. Could it be possible that the two different bear species had mated, resulting in the strange bear killed by Martell? Is it, in fact, a hybrid? And if so, how did the two species come into contact or mate in the wild? Their natural habitats and food sources are different. Historically, there is a precedent for a hybrid polar grizzly. In the 19th century, amateurs bred hybrids in captivity.
In the Victorian times, of course, anyone who was interested in natural history would have been interested in these freaks of nature. Obviously, there were some bad scientists who were just after kind of sensations and who did more circus acts.
Collectors experimented to see what kinds of strange animals would result from crossbreeding. Lions with tigers, horses with zebras, pumas with leopards.
If you've got a freak of nature, you want to know how it becomes like that.
These were mutant animals that were paraded in front of an astounded public. And among them, a hybrid bear, a cross of polar and grizzly. Bred in captivity in Germany in 1874. The only time a hybrid bear had been seen before was the result of captive mating. Had someone in northern Canada been inspired with a similarly deviant intent to captively mate these two species of bear? Or could it have occurred naturally in the wild? In the remote Canadian town of Inuvik, government officers try to determine if the bear shot by American hunter Jim Martell is what he says it is, just an unusual polar bear. There is no evidence to support the possibility this is a hybrid bear bred in captivity.
With regards to if it was bred in captivity and released, I don't believe so.
The nearest zoo that has both captive grizzlies and polar bears is over 2,500 miles away from Banks Island. There are no reports of any animals having escaped. But if the bear is a hybrid and hadn't been bred in captivity, then it must have occurred naturally, in the wild.
I think what happened is a female polar bear and a grizzly male got together and they just decided to go nature's way.
Except for the fact that the two species do not normally cross paths in the wild. Polar bear females do not normally travel south from the islands onto the Canadian mainland.
We put out 20 collars on female polar bears in 2000 and monitored them for 3 or 4 years. And none of them really seemed to come on the land. So there was no movements onto the mainland.
So, had a male grizzly traveled to a remote Arctic island to mate with a female polar bear? Biologist Rob Mulders specializes in tracking the movements of grizzlies in northern Canada.
Our unique finding was that these bears are actually using huge areas relative to other grizzly bear populations. The males are using 7,145 square kilometers.
Using GPS tracking devices, North Canadian grizzlies have been observed traveling hundreds of miles during spring.
These are the largest home ranges known for grizzly bears.
And many have been tracked heading north away from their usual territory. With over 30 years' experience, wilderness expert Boyd Warner speculates why.
Two things have to be happening. Either there's no food in their home area, or there's just too many bears in the home area and these ones are getting pushed out.
Grizzlies are indeed capable of traveling 300 miles north from the mainland to Banks Island, using the frozen sea as a bridge. The grizzlies are entering polar bear territory.
Grizzly bears are showing up in places that they've never been seen before, so they're starting to mix more and more with the polar bear range.
Evidence indicates an increasing movement of grizzlies towards the frozen north. But no one has ever documented the two species mating in the wild. And the Canadian government authorities know only one documented instance of their meeting, in a completely different population of bears. American biologist James Wilder studies the polar bears that feed on whale carcasses in northern Alaska.
They look like mastodons out there, and they have all these prehistoric-sounding vocalizations.
After thousands of hours up close with the bears, Wilder and the team of scientists become familiar with their behavior. But while filming at night, the team observes a startling event.
Some of the adult male polar bears were probably pushing 1,200 pounds or more even. Then out comes this 4-foot-tall, 300-pound grizzly bear that absolutely stampedes the polar bears that are there.
What they film is astounding evidence of the meeting of the two species of bear. But there is no evidence in the footage of any inclination to mate.
Polar bears definitely seem to have a natural aversion to grizzly bears. The grizzly bear scent blowing to the polar bears, that was enough to trigger them to run off.
The natural reaction of these two species is to avoid each other. Under what circumstances would these natural enemies mate? the Inuit guide, Kaptana, has a clue. He has observed the mating behavior of polar bears.
What usually happens is, even if the female doesn't want, she's so terrified that she just submits, you know.
The mating of polar bears is an aggressive act, and encounters between polars and grizzlies, also aggressive. It looks extremely unlikely the two species would mate. However, expedition organizer Boyd Warner knew of a bizarre story from an Inuit guide.
At the north tip of Victoria Island, Inuit guides were up there, and they came across tracks of a grizzly bear tracking a female with 2 cubs, which was a polar bear. And they followed it and found where the grizzly had killed one of the cubs. It's largely believed that they killed the cubs to try and bring the female back in heat sooner.
By killing her cubs, the grizzly could be trying to force the female polar back into heat, suggesting a grizzly's intent to mate with a polar bear in the wild. The likely scenario is the bear killed by Martell resulted from these 2 different bear species mating near Banks Island.
I do believe it was somewhere off the coast of Banks Island here.
A grizzly had made its way north from the mainland in pursuit of food and a mate.
They need food, and they also have the urge to reproduce, and I'm not sure which takes precedence.
This aggressive loner had traveled vast distances, using the frozen sea as a bridge to the islands. He crossed onto Banks Island and smelled out a female polar bear, and then mated with her. This theory seems to be the most plausible idea of how the hybrid bear shot by Martell came about. In Nelson, British Columbia, after more tests, geneticist David Paco and his team make a breakthrough. Unable to get a perfect match to either a pure polar or pure grizzly bear, they reach a radical conclusion.
Oh, we were pretty excited. It's clearly a very rare occurrence.
It continuously assigned between the grizzly bear and polar bear populations, and so we could only conclude that it must be a hybrid.
We're very confident that it's a hybrid.
The DNA analysis reveals without doubt that the bear is a hybrid. Further tests give more information. By amplifying the genetic code in the DNA, Paco is able to reveal that the mother of the hybrid is in fact a polar bear.
If, as we contend, it's a 50-50 mix of the 2 species, then by exclusion, the father was a brown bear.
This is a bear that appears to be the result of a catalogue of unlikely chances. Its father, a grizzly, headed into territory it did not normally inhabit. Found its mother, a female polar bear, in a 27,000 square mile wilderness. This odd couple produced a healthy cub that continued to thrive undiscovered for 6 years. Until April the 16th, 2006. Martell had shot an extremely rare hybrid bear, the polar grizz.
For me, it's exciting because I have the only one, number one. Oh, I feel great about it, yeah.
The government authorities in the Northwest Territories of Canada are forced to make a ruling on whether the animal shot by Martell is an illegal possession of wildlife.
It's the first time it's ever been documented. It definitely was an interesting result.
The bear is technically half polar, and the officers decide that Martell is innocent. The accusation is revoked.
When the analysis was done and it came back as half polar bear, you can't say that that's an illegal take. I mean, it's a polar bear.
Although the US government has since banned the importation of trophy polar bears, in 2006, Martell is free to take the bear home.
It's a beautiful animal, and I'm proud to have it at my home.
News that this animal is a wild hybrid starts to reverberate worldwide.
My wife said, "Oh, how is my famous husband?" And I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, haven't you heard?" I said, "Heard what?" And she told me the story about, well, you're all over the world in the newspapers.
All the articles report Martell shot the rarest bear on Earth.
I got a lot of emails, a lot of calls. I mean, I had some calls that they wanted to shoot me from the States.
Yet this was a fluke incident, a legal hunt in the vast wilderness. If the bear hadn't been found and shot by Martell, it would never have been documented as the first instance of a wild hybrid polar grizz. Although the hybrid bear is a unique discovery, this bear cannot be regarded as a new species. It can only be classified as a new species if there is more than one animal and they can reproduce among themselves. But Martell believes his bear may not be the only one.
I think if there's one, there's more. It happened once, it'll happen again. That's the way I feel.
Martell's Inuit guide, Roger Kaptana, believes there are more hybrid bears out there.
Polar bear will have 2 or 3 cubs. It's quite possible that it has brothers and sisters out there.
I mean, you see 2 cubs lots of times with polar bears. Grizzly bears, you see 3 cubs frequently.
If the polar grizz had siblings, there might be more hybrid bears nearby.
In the same winter that Jim got his, another bear was seen by a sports hunter and guides, and it was obviously a very dark bear, different characteristics a little bit than this one, larger, but definitely wasn't right, and those guys know what's right.
It seems the polar grizz, though extremely rare, may not be a one-off. Professor James Mallett believes the blonde grizzlies observed by government officers might be yet further evidence of wild hybrid bears.
The pale grizzlies, I think, may indicate that some crossing has gone on in the past. It wouldn't be improbable, certainly not based on what we know about other species.
This case has changed the way Canadian government officers view the bears of the Arctic.
There's been incidental sightings of bears that are described to me as very blonde grizzly bears. I never really thought of them as possibly being hybrids until this happened.
And the incident could rewrite the biology textbook.
We always think of evolution being a process. You start with one population, it splits into 2, they stay separate for long enough that they can no longer interbreed when they next make contact. But there's absolutely no reason that they couldn't, at some point, come back together and produce something else. It could indeed be a natural part of evolution at some rate.
This vast icy landscape could indeed contain the beginning of a new species.
So certainly there's every reason to expect that there might be another one out there. Perhaps we'll come across it one of these days.
Jim Martell remains satisfied with his trophy.
I feel I was born a hunter, and I'm still a hunter, and I'm going to keep hunting.
Yet it seems that Martell may indeed be the first, and also the last, American sports hunter to have a hybrid polar grizzly bear in his collection of hunting trophies.
The heart of Tanzania in East Africa. A country that's become a human-animal war zone. Here, lions are a living nightmare.
This is a hunting ground for lions that have decided to make their quarry human beings.
In many parts of Tanzania, lions have undergone a disturbing change in behavior that has caused a fourfold increase in lion attacks on humans.
Once a lion discovers that it can kill people, it's going to continue killing people until it's killed.
Over 600 people have been eaten by lions since 1990.
There's a general fear among these communities that these lions may strike anywhere and at any point in time.
In the past, lion attacks on humans have been unusual events, but now, whole prides of lions have turned to man-eating, utilizing their formidable hunting skills to target humans.
So what we're seeing here is really different than most of what you hear from anywhere else in Africa.
We're talking about lions that get on a roof and dig people out. We're talking about lions that dig through a wall. We're not talking about just a regular old lion out there in the plains.
Are lions now turning into serial killers? What has happened in Tanzania to upset the balance and spark such a violent increase in human bloodshed? Tanzania, East Africa. The epicenter of an ongoing crisis. A country where lions are switching their sights to focus on humans as fair game. On the 10th of April 2008, Musafizi Shabami, a young builder, was cycling with an older friend called Muna. They were near home, but so too was a 140-kilogram male lion running at full speed.
The lion, it just came out from behind us and started chasing us.
Within seconds, the lion was in striking distance of the cyclists.
I was very scared. I was trembling so much I thought I was going to faint. He was chasing us and roaring. And that's when my friend fell off his bike.
The lion leapt on Muna's back and dragged him to the edge of the highway. Standing on the roadside, Musafizi witnessed Muna being mauled by the lion.
At this point I ran. I felt like I'd lost my mind.
Kimu is the wife of the deceased. She faces a tough future supporting a family of 6 children.
For me, he just said goodbye going to work. I couldn't believe it at all. We were sharing and contributing, but now I'm struggling on my own.
Kimu's husband is just one of over 900 victims of lion attacks in Tanzania since 1990. The situation is desperate. Thousands of rural Tanzanians have left their villages abandoned, terrorized not by single rogue lions, but by prides of lions, hunting as a team to stalk and kill humans.
We're not talking about just regular old lions. We're talking about lions that walk into a village and kill people. We're talking about lions that get on a roof and dig people out. We're talking about lions that dig through a wall. We're not talking about just a regular old lion out there in the plains.
The cause of this bizarre behavioral change is a mystery, particularly as these outbreaks of man-eating lion attacks are not isolated to one region of Tanzania. They've occurred throughout the country, from Lindi in the south to Rufiji, and now further north in the district of Singida, where 20 people have been killed by lions in the past 12 months. So critical is the situation the Tanzanian government has called in the services of a big cat specialist from the United States named Darren Simpson. Simpson is a lion conservationist and tracker with a wealth of experience in human-lion conflicts. Because lions are a protected species, he will be working with a team of government rangers to track down and kill the man-eating lions that are terrorizing the region. This is not the first time Simpson has hunted lions in Tanzania.
I've been here twice before. They've had everything from people being jerked down, 2 male lions jerked down 2 young men right in front of a police station one night, killed them right in front of the policeman. The lions were shot and went off and died, but so did the 2 young men. There were 2 elderly ladies sleeping in their house that were snoring, and a lion came through the thatched roof, jumped on one lady, and in her struggle, she woke up the other lady who screamed. The lion proceeded to go over and kill her as well. It's kind of a nightmare situation. Needless to say, the villagers have had enough and they want something done. They need somebody in this case that can come in, do it properly, do it humanely and effectively. So as much as I love these big cats, and you're talking to a guy that's dedicated his life to capturing these animals for conservation. This is what I do. This is something that has to be dealt with. This is their reality, and so I'm here to help them deal with it.
Working alongside Simpson is a team of 6 rangers, heavily armed with semi-automatics and shotguns, led by Wildlife Division official Dennis Ikanda, seen here in the camouflage jacket. Ikanda is a human-lion conflict specialist and a veteran lion tracker. The week before Simpson's arrival, his team shot and killed one of the target animals, but 2 man-eating lions remain at large.
Although we have experienced some level of success by killing one of the man-eaters, but we still have 2 more to go. And worst of all, we have a male lion on the loose, and they usually become a lot worse when their partners are killed.
The 2 surviving man-eating lions now pose an even greater threat to the people of this region. The lions are now highly aggressive, and the trackers are under extreme pressure to kill the lions before they claim their next human victim.
It's very difficult to keep up with these lions as they're always on the move. You can never anticipate anything. Anything is possible. A human being may be killed. Livestock is killed every 2-3 days. And you have political pressure from the government to make sure that you deliver.
Simpson and Ikanda receive a tip-off from a local herdsman. The lions have been spotted leaving the half-eaten corpse of a donkey. The hunters will use this dead donkey to lure the lions into foot snares. Since lions are notoriously possessive of their kills, it's possible they'll return tonight for another meal and step right into Simpson's traps. Should a lion place a paw on one of these cushions, the pressure will fire a trigger, tightening a noose of wire around the lion's leg. This snare has been designed to anchor a 200-kilo male lion to the ground.
Out of all this country out here, I need to make these cats put their foot inside a loop that big.
The trackers are aware that well-camouflaged lions could be close by, studying their every move. Lions have strong instincts to protect their kill. The hunters remain prepared. At any moment, the two man-eating lions that have been terrorizing the Singida region could attack them in a bid to reclaim their kill. These lions have already proved that they're not afraid to ambush human beings.
They have adapted to attacking and eating human beings, so they actively seek human beings as prey, and they do it very well. They have studied the environment, they have studied the community, and they pretty much, I would say, know there's a hunting team pursuing them.
We want to make them go straight through here. Okay, we're going.
The hunters are as vulnerable to attack from Singida's man-eaters as anyone else in the region. Their only protection is the dying daylight. Once the sun goes down, the balance of power will shift to favor the lions. And the team will be open to an ambush from Africa's largest predator. Lions can grow up to 3 meters long, and males can weigh over 200 kilograms. Their speed, strength, weaponry, and cunning make them one of the animal kingdom's most formidable terrestrial predators. But in Tanzania, prides of lions are adding humans to their diet of zebra, impala, and wildebeest. A radical and disturbing change in lion behavior. In the Singida region, one pride of man-eaters is going to extraordinary lengths to catch its new prey. They've learned there are easy targets along the main highway. The last place you'd expect to see lions. In the past year alone, at least 20 people have been killed by lions on or near this roadside. This road is now known as the Highway of Death.
It's a paved 2-lane road, main artery, through little tiny communities full of dwellings, an area where children walk to school every day. It's basically the village sidewalk. Women carrying loads on their heads to supply their homes, groceries, water. Pretty benign area, you would think. This is a hunting ground for lions that have decided to make their quarry human beings. They're using the bush areas that are alongside the road as an ambush area. What, in essence, that we're into here is a human-wildlife conflict, and it feels like a war zone. This is extreme aggression by these animals.
Less than 2 kilometers from the highway, and with the light fading, the team finally finishes setting its lion traps.
Okay, that's gotta do. It's gonna have to do.
So when it starts moving in, they usually come in very cautiously. So these sticks will actually guide where they place their front and hind feet. So when it gets here, it will place the first front foot between this last and second stick, and then between the second and the third, and then eventually the fourth. The lion's head will be by then more focused on the bait, and by then it will be caught, and the trap will be fired, and then it will be caught.
Just before leaving, Simpson makes hyena calls, hoping to trick the lions into defending their kill from scavenging hyenas. Now the team must wait until dawn to see if they can catch a man-eating lion. Tanzania is home to more than 1/3 of the world's lion population. Over the millennia, these super predators have lived on the plains, honing their deadly hunting skills. But in Tanzania, lions are switching their sights to hunting humans. In a radical change to their natural behavior, whole prides of hungry lions are now stalking humans in search of an easy meal.
One thing we're seeing here is lions that are bold enough to walk straight into villages and take people from right near their homes when there might be a number of people right near them. And this is not a normal behavior. This is not something that normal lions will do. This is an indication that these lions have learned that people are prey, and they're actually preying on humans like they'd prey on any other animals.
Hadas Kushnir, a human-lion conflict expert, has been researching man-eating lions for 4 years. Her studies suggest a startling change in lion behavior. Adult lions may now be teaching their young techniques and tactics for hunting humans.
There's a common misconception that most of the lions that cause these attacks are old or sick, and that's actually not something that we found to be true here in southern Tanzania. Sometimes we find young lions, healthy lions, taking part in it. So we think that they are teaching their young. And once they view us as any prey type, they're going to, eat us just like they'd eat a gazelle.
Kushnir is working in the Rufiji region to determine the reasons behind the dramatic increase in man-eating attacks here. She's learning that the lions of this area are continually adapting their methods to increase their proficiency at hunting humans.
You can't underestimate the intelligence of these animals when it comes to hunting prey. They study their prey. They learn their prey's movements and their prey's behavior, and they'll adapt to how their prey is changing.
This was particularly evident along the banks of the Rufiji River, used by the farming community in their daily routines.
The way the villages in Rufiji are set up in this one area is that villages are on the north side of the river and agricultural fields are to the south. When the outbreak in 2002 started, early on most of the attacks were on the other side of the river, on the south side, and they were at night. But people started getting fearful. They started coming home earlier in the day, and the attacks started happening earlier in the day. And eventually, people stopped going to their agricultural fields altogether, moved back to the villages, and the lion actually swam across the river and started preying on people on the north side of the river. So they're able to adapt, they're able to learn. And it's terrifying because it's not just a chance event that you might get caught by a lion. There's a lion out there stalking you, actually looking for you to eat.
In the Rufiji River region of southern Tanzania, the locals blame the deaths of 40 people on a single serial-killing lion they named Osama, after the world's most wanted terrorist. But Kushnir believes that groups of lions are responsible for the bloodshed.
Generally, it's going to be a small group of individuals. There'll be males and females. But what happens towards the end of an outbreak is, through the hunting of lions, they've killed all the other lions. At the end, there's one man standing. The cases we know of, a lot of times it tends to be one male lion. The male lion might be injured already, and towards the end can wreak a lot of havoc.
Osama was eventually killed by a team of government hunters in April 2004. A sign on the outskirts of Kilimani village marks the spot where the lion's corpse is buried. Abdallah Chembele is a victim of the outbreak of man-eating that has plagued the Rufiji region. During the night in March 2003, a lion, possibly Osama, broke through a wall in his family's house, dragged his mother out into a nearby field, and ate her.
When I went home, I found the door was wide open and there was no one. When I went looking, I could see there were some marks on the ground, like someone's elbow. When I investigated further, I found her clothes and then blood.
The horror of living in the presence of man-eaters is so bad, many locals refuse to believe normal lions are the cause of the bloodshed. Instead, they imagine these killings are the work of spirit lions, supernatural demons summoned up by enemy witch doctors and sent to destroy their foes.
These lions can just knock down the door and get in and take you out. Someone sent them to come here and kill people. These are no ordinary lions.
Hadas Kushnir knows about the traditional belief in spirit lions. She presumes that these supernatural explanations help people to deal psychologically with the horror of the situation.
I look at them as coping mechanisms. If I had to live in a place where there were lions all the time, you know, the only way you could sort of settle that with yourself and feel better is to convince yourself that a normal lion is not what's the risk. The risk is actually some sort of spirit lion. And so a lot of people have the belief that spirit lions are sent to kill specific people. Normal lions don't kill. And that's one of the ways I think they deal with living with the fear of lions, is if you believe that a normal lion won't hurt you and it has to be a lion specifically sent to kill you, it's sort of much easier to go about your daily life.
But for Darren Simpson, the explanation for man-eating lion attacks does not lie in the supernatural. The culprits are real lions, pure and simple.
They are what they are. They're a lion. They're a force you have to deal with when you live around them. They're not evil. They're not spirit lions. They're not things that are sent to avenge the sins of others. They're simply a very incredible, formidable animal. That's what they are, and they are a wonder. But unfortunately, in this sort of scenario here, they just can't coexist with people when they begin to eat them on a regular basis.
The hunt for two man-eating lions that have been terrorizing the Singida region of Tanzania continues. The tracking team are revisiting the traps they set the previous night around the carcass of a donkey recently killed by these lions. The sound of a big cat up ahead in the bush seems to suggest their efforts have been rewarded.
Leopard? No lion? No lion, leopard. Big male.
The Tanzanian government has ordered the hunters to shoot and kill any potential man-eater captured in the vicinity.
Are we gonna kill him? I guess.
One of the disadvantages of foot snare traps is the possibility of capturing non-target carnivores. But leopards have been known to kill humans, and releasing a large predator at this sensitive time is unthinkable.
You don't have option B, you know, you have to do this. It's not like we can sit down and interview them when 15 people have been killed. You know, we have to put human welfare here first. And in this area where the man-eating is at horrendous levels, we have to do something about it. It's not fun at all. You know, it stinks when you have to do that. But I don't want to see more people get killed around here. As much as people would like to think there's a possible alternative, they're not living here. They're not having their kids get killed and their mother get killed and their father get dug out of a house by a large predator. So leopards are culprits in this area as well, and they're on the list. So that's why we're doing what we're doing.
The lion hunters are not giving up. There's enough donkey carcass left to set up another trap. Simpson lays his foot snares once more in the hope that tonight he'll have better luck and will succeed at catching the man-eaters. One explanation for the surge in human-lion conflict in Tanzania is that the natural prey of lions like impala, zebra, and kudu has become severely depleted due to poaching and increased habitat destruction. Lions simply have no choice but to go in search of alternative prey.
As lions seek out new habitat, obviously they want to go into habitat that doesn't have the presence of other dominant lions, and they want to have the presence of prey. When there is no prey and the prey's hunted out, you have substitute prey, like what's behind me right here. Livestock become the first conflict.
As a consequence of preying on livestock, lions inevitably come into contact with people and discover they too are easy targets.
Human beings are like little pink balloons to these very formidable predators. Herds like this usually will mean that there are herders. Then if people present themselves time after time after time, as you see here, where you have small children walking to school in lion habitat, you have women going to this watering hole every day to gather water with small children, all by themselves, a smart creature like a lion begins to figure out the easy opportunity.
In the refugee region, Hadas Kushnir attempts to find further explanations as to why the rate of man-eating lion fatalities has quadrupled since 1990. She's discovered a pattern in the statistics that leads her to believe it's the people's method of agriculture that makes them vulnerable to attack.
One of the places where people are most at risk is in their agricultural fields. Generally, the agricultural fields are pretty far from the village. They're isolated from each other, and there's a lot of bush surrounding it. So right there, you're at risk. One of the really important factors that we're finding are bush pigs as crop pests. Bush pigs are nocturnal crop pests, so they only come at night. And in order to protect your crops, you have to sleep at night in your agricultural fields and sometimes leave your hut in pitch darkness and make noise and try to scare these bush pigs away. Because there's not a lot of prey in the area, bush pigs are a really important prey source for lions in these districts. And so lions know where to find the bush pigs, and the bush pigs are found where the people are found. And so oftentimes you'll get sort of a collision between people and lions with bush pigs as the link.
It was while defending their crops against marauding bush pigs that Asifoye Mbwata's family was devastated by a lion attack. In the middle of the night, his father, mother, and 2 nephews were dragged out of their shelter and eaten.
The exact picture of what happened. The lion, he took my mother first and ate her there, up to the waist, and killed my father and put him aside, and took the children. He arranged them almost next to each other, so that when my brother went to look for them there, he saw the children first and thought they were sleeping. But they had already gone.
Despite this tragedy, Asifoye and his relatives continue to sleep in the fields, guarding their crops from bush pigs. He says they have no choice.
If we don't sleep in the fields, then all the labor we engage in will be for nothing, because our food will be eaten by animals like pigs or monkeys. That's why people sleep in the fields, so that they can have something to eat. We know that the lion kills, but if you are spared, your children will get to eat.
Many villagers sleep in temporary makeshift shelters called dungus that provide little protection against lions. Because the refugee villagers have no option but to be out in the fields at night, Kushnir is trying to encourage them to be more proactive in defending themselves against attacking lions.
What this family has done, which is really great, they've built a dungu that's reinforced and closed on the bottom. This here is quite strong, and over here they actually have bamboo poles. And what's really wonderful is that this is the area here, which would normally be open, and the family would normally be cooking here at night, resting here at night, and what they've done is close it off so that if a lion is roaming, the lion won't be able to see them or get to them very easily. Unfortunately, not all houses are like this. There's a lot of makeshift huts out there that are constructed much more flimsy, lower to the ground, a lot of more sort of straw and palm, where lions can literally just jump in and take people from inside or even knock the structure down.
The villagers of the Rufiji region are learning to live with the man-eaters. But up in Singida, man-eating lions are a new menace. The local people are panicking and their hopes lie with the government team. The hunters return to the baited traps and find they've failed to catch their target.
I'm gonna let him go, you guys. Okay, watch out now. I need everybody to stand over there.
Yesterday, they caught and killed a leopard. Now, they face an enraged hyena. Although this animal is capable of inflicting a lethal bite, it doesn't pose a threat to the local community. The hunters will attempt to release the animal. Simpson takes great pains to ensure this female spotted hyena doesn't sustain any injuries. It will return to the wild unharmed.
Loose, loose, everybody back. It's real common to catch spotted hyenas when you're using baited sets like this. If you go over there and you look at what's left of that carcass, and the bone chips, shank bones, cannon bones, all those sort of things, they eat them like candy bar, just like you biting through a Snickers bar. You know, that's how much jaw strength they have. So when they bite you, it's very serious. And they lock up like a bulldog. And so, yeah, that's what you got to be careful of.
Having failed to catch the lions with the donkey carcass, the hunters are now employing a new strategy.
That's it, baby. Talk it up.
Live bait. The team has come to a watering hole where they know the lions regularly come to drink. The plan is to put 2 goats in a protective cage to prevent them from being harmed and lay snares all round its perimeter. The hope is that the lions will be drawn to the commotion of bleating goats and walk straight into Simpson's trap.
Leave no stone unturned, no holds barred, and you throw as much at them as you can. So this is a little unconventional, and hopefully this will work.
These are desperate measures. But will the hunters finally manage to catch the man-eating lions, believed to be responsible for killing 20 people in the past year?
I really want this lion bad. I want him because of what he's doing for all parties concerned. I want him because he's starting to get real cagey on us, and it's a challenge. I'll admit that. I love catching animals that are really difficult to catch. Take great pride in that. But to catch this guy would be real special because it's going to mean a lot to a lot of people.
Tanzania is home to 1/3 of the world's rapidly diminishing lion population. It's estimated there may be fewer than 15,000 lions left in its national parks and unprotected areas. Throughout Africa, these majestic cats are vulnerable to the loss of their prey, the threat of encroaching agriculture and the retaliation of humans for the death of their livestock. The government faces a no-win situation. On the one hand, they want to conserve these animals because they are a multi-million-dollar source of revenue from tourism and organized hunting. On the other, by encouraging their conservation, Tanzanians are made more prone to attack.
Part of the reason that we're experiencing an increase in these number of attacks is the positive outcome of lion conservation in Tanzania. Numbers seem to have increased, and excess individuals from core populations are now spilling into buffer zones that extend into village areas, and then human-lion encounters have increased over the years.
In southern Tanzania, the Selous Game Reserve is the second largest protected region in Africa, covering an area of 50,000 square kilometers. It's one of the most important strongholds of game animals in the country, and consequently, a hotspot for lions. There may be as many as 4,500 lions living in the reserve. Biologist Henry Brink monitors the Selous lion population by using radio collars to track the size and extent of their range.
Currently, we follow some 114 different individuals, covering some 800 square kilometers, which is sort of 14 lions per 100 square kilometers, which is very good lion density.
In the eyes of conservationists, the Selous lions are a success story, but there's a problem.
The human population is increasing, and it's coming closer and closer to the boundary of Selous. The Selous boundary, in large parts of it, is just boundary markers. What's a marker to a lion? It goes where it wants.
The lions of this park don't recognize park boundaries and are prone to leave its perimeter in search of prey. When this happens, they inevitably come into contact with people.
Just recently, there was on the 11th of June, a lion attacked a person just 500 meters or so from the Selous boundary in a sort of small open hut. It was like a nightmare. That's the way the people there described it. In that area, there's no power, everything's dark, you go to sleep early, and then suddenly in the middle of the night, they're attacked. It was very much like a nightmare.
But perhaps these attacks are not as unpredictable as once thought. One of the behavior patterns observed by scientists such as Brink is that lion attacks on humans increase during the rainy season.
There is food here, there's enough food, but what happens is during the rainy season, all the prey disperses from around waterholes and so on, and the lions have a much difficult time finding the food, and therefore they also disperse and start looking for food, and it's during the rainy season where you get this sort of spike in man-eating, because the lions are, in some cases, leaving the park and so on.
The suggestion that changes in the weather can trigger man-eating outbreaks is supported by other research. After 4 years of studying man-eating across Tanzania, Hadash Kushnir is also convinced that rainfall patterns are a central factor in the recent rise of man-eating prides. When rainfall increases, man-eating increases, and the effect can be felt right across the country.
It seems like too much of a coincidence that you have 3 outbreaks happening, starting in the same year. There was 1 here in Rufiji and 2 in Lindi with 2 separate groups of lions. So the scale is pretty enormous. Here in Rufiji, The numbers we have are about 52 people being killed, but down in Lindy, the numbers are much higher, upwards of 85 or 90 during that 2-3 years time period.
Kushnir's theory is that the ultimate cause of these simultaneous man-eating outbreaks could lie well beyond the shores of Tanzania.
There's a large number of attacks in 1999, and we have anecdotal evidence that there was a lot of flooding that year. There was a El Nino in 97, 98 that caused a lot of flooding in the region. The wildlife patterns were different than usual, and that's why the attacks were higher.
El Nino is a worldwide weather phenomenon that results in supersized flooding across East Africa. The floods force the game animals to seek higher ground, with the result that some prides of lions find themselves marooned with a limited supply of food. It's at this point that they are forced to go in search of human prey.
From what people told us, it sounded like if you get a lot of rain, you have animals in places where you wouldn't normally have animals, or you're missing animals in areas where you would normally have animals. So potentially the lion prey wasn't where the lions were. And so lions were then more desperate, more hungry, and turned towards people.
Many scientists predict that global warming is likely to increase the severity and frequency of flooding events. If the connection between flooding and the rise in outbreaks of man-eating lion attacks is proven to be true, the future looks bleak. A future that will undoubtedly see an increase in human-lion conflict. The hunt continues for the man-eating lions of the Singida region of Tanzania, where at least 20 people have been killed in the past year on or near the highway. The pressure mounts for the hunters to get results before more lives are lost to the lions. Simpson and the hunters have returned to inspect their traps, and once again, their efforts have been foiled. They've snared a second leopard and have no option but to kill it.
Once a lion, as well as other carnivores, begin eating humans, they will not stop. And in fact, this has led to Tanzania's wildlife policy that any large carnivore that attacks a human being, the only solution is to eradicate it. As you see, it's a beautiful animal, young, still young in its prime age, but it's a problem. I mean, it's a human-wildlife conflict issue.
This is the stark reality of 21st century Africa, where conflict between people and large predators is rapidly increasing. Those on the front line of the human-lion conflict believe that the best short-term solution is to continue deploying hunter forces to target these animals aggressively. Without expert teams like this, local communities will deal with the killers in their own way. A path that ends in disaster for all the wildlife.
What you will cause is people to take it into their own hands and begin poison campaigns. And I'm here to tell you, I've been all over this continent and I've seen the results of poison campaigns, and it's ugly. And you will not just lose 1 or 2 problem lions, you'll lose all the lions. And that's what we're trying to actively prevent.
Rural Africans face many challenges. When confronted with a new foe, a man-eating pride, many people here feel they have no option but to retaliate. And they do so with devastating effect. One of the most poignant stories to come out of this conflict is that of a herder whose wife was eaten by a lion.
An individual who lost his wife decided to help the community out of desperation by lacing the remains of his wife's body after she was attacked by these man-eaters with rat poison. And the lion came and took the body, and after 2 days it was found dead.
A graphic example of the lengths people will go to eliminate lions. This conflict is devastating for both humans and lions. Lions once roamed the whole of Africa, but human retaliation against the man-eaters, the increase in agriculture, hunting, and the loss of natural prey have steadily eliminated the continent's lion population. In the last 30 years, Africa's lion population has almost halved from 75,000 to less than 40,000.
It's very much not good for lions. When there's an outbreak, often they'll kill all the lions in the area indiscriminately. Any lion they see will be killed, even if a lion's not responsible for the attack. And what eventually could happen is that lion populations are limited only to protected areas. And in most cases, protected areas aren't large enough to sustain viable populations for generations to come. So it's definitely a risk. And it's a risk for carnivores around the world. Retaliation because of conflict is one of the major reasons for carnivore population decline in Africa, in Europe, in North America, everywhere.
Lion biologist Henry Brink also considers a future where lions may only be found in protected areas, separated from human habitation.
Tanzania has gone exactly the right way. It's set aside some 30% of its land in some sort of protected conservation status, which is an awful lot of land if you compare it to other areas. So I think in Tanzania, for example, you will have a healthy lion population in the future. Whether they'll exist outside the sort of protected areas, let's say in 50 years' time, that's another matter. It's very difficult for large carnivores and humans to coexist.
Darren Simpson, who continues on the hunt for the man-eaters of Singida, is pragmatic when questioned on whether humans and lions can coexist. Humans, he says, will always prevail.
Animals always lose. Unfortunately, they're the ones that have to give. These cats no longer have a place in this particular ecosystem, and they have to be removed. That's reality. And as you remove habitat and you have more people, you're going to have more conflict. Out in this area where we are, we happen to have predators that are extremely formidable, and yet they aren't solitary. They run in prides. Unfortunately, outside conducive habitat, in an urban area, there is no conservation benefit to apex predators that are hunting regularly human beings.
In the month after the film crew left Tanzania, 2 more people were killed by lions along the road the locals have named the Highway of Death. But finally, there's been a breakthrough. The male lion that had led a pride to kill at least 20 people in less than a year was caught in a cage trap. A victory for the hunters that had spent the better part of 3 months tracking down the man-eating lions of the Singida region. But there's still one lion at large, and the war with no foreseeable end continues.
Something sinister is creeping through the forests of Tasmania.
What we saw was both disgusting and spectacular.
It is grotesque.
Teeth falling out, jaws breaking off, tumours protruding into eye sockets.
Lethal.
There must have been tens of thousands of devils dying in absolute misery.
And without precedent.
That's unheard of. Just doesn't happen.
It has sparked a major international investigation.
We were stepping into the unknown, so we didn't know really what to expect.
Touched on a nerve of worldwide anxiety.
People are frightened of cancers.
And has turned scientific theory on its head.
Cancer is not contagious. You cannot catch cancer from someone else.
One evening in 1996. Wildlife photographer Christo Bars sets out on a journey which will make history. He travels across the Australian state of Tasmania, an island the size of West Virginia, heading for an isolated forest in Mount William National Park. He's hoping to photograph the elusive nocturnal creature the Tasmanians call the devil. He lays his bait and waits. But nothing in the world could prepare him for what walks in front of his lens. What he photographs looks like something out of a horror film. Suddenly, another grossly distorted Tasmanian devil emerges from the dark. And then another. What is happening in the forest of Tasmania? What is creating these disfigurements? Nick Mooney is one of Tasmania's top wildlife biologists and has studied the Tasmanian devil in the wild for 30 years. He's the first to see the photos taken by Christo Bars.
My initial response when I saw the pictures was, Christ, what the hell was that? That's, I've never seen anything like that before.
Mooney sets out to investigate, heading for the site where the photographs were taken. He hopes to find the same devils as in the pictures.
The photos Christo had got were truly spectacular. I've seen a lot of disease in wildlife. I've seen a lot of injuries, a lot of deformity, and I've never seen anything like it. And all the hundreds of devils I've caught over the years.
Mooney needs to trap the same animals so he can try to assess their affliction. This is where the disfigured devils were last seen. Mooney's given himself 3 nights to find them.
I would have expected over the 3 nights I trapped with 20 traps to catch at least 15 different devils.
Tasmanian devils live within a fixed home range. They're carnivorous scavengers and have an acute sense of smell, detecting dead meat from over a mile away, so they're usually easily attracted to bait. But this trip is different.
The days were very quiet compared to a normal trapping trip. In the end, I'd only caught 3 or 4 different individuals instead of the 14 or 15 I was expecting to catch.
And none of the devils he does catch show any sign of abnormality.
I came back several times over the next few months, but much the same happened, and it seemed obvious to me there were certainly a lot less devils there than had been in the past.
Why are there so few devils? Where are all the disfigured devils? Mooney only has the photographs to help him try and work out what's going on. His first hunch is some kind of chemical poisoning.
There's a couple of chemicals that are misused to kill devils. We know there's a potential for very dangerous chemicals to produce a mutation of some sort.
But Mooney leaves Mount William with no answers. He has no proof.
The fact that it was found by chance leaves a whole lot of questions unanswered. Is it just in devils? How many devils? We hoped it was some isolated case, some freak disease, just in that time and place. That was what we'd hoped.
For 3 years, there are no further sightings of disfigured devils. Until 1999. A zoologist, Dr. Menna Jones, travels to Little Swanport, 225 kilometres from where the photographs were taken. Jones has made Tasmanian devils her life's work.
I've been in love with the devil and wanted to be a zoologist ever since I could spell the word when I was 7 or 8 years old.
The Tasmanian devil is unique to Tasmania and is the island's unofficial mascot. It is a rural cleaner, playing a vital role in the ecosystem by devouring carcasses that might otherwise lead to disease. But the devil has few friends. It steals livestock, has a spine-chilling screech, and is a legendary fighter. It's no surprise that early settlers on the island called this nocturnal beast the devil. Jones makes regular field trips, researching devil behavior and their population patterns. But this trip is unusual.
I was on a 2-day field trip to collect samples. The first animal I got, I thought, oh, that's a strange looking lump. Never seen that before. They were bizarre. To me, they didn't look life-threatening.
As Jones continues along her trap line, she finds more and more devils with these bizarre growths.
By the end of that day, I caught 8 devils with these lumps. They were just a couple of centimetres to 8 centimetres across. They were big, some of them were just a bit ulcerated, but they weren't really horrible.
It's not unusual for Tasmanian devils to be scarred and ulcerated. Their fierce fighting often results in lumps and infections.
And it was just lodged in the back of my mind as an isolated incident that was weird.
It's not until 2 years later, in a different location, that Jones realises there could be something more serious going on. 2001, Freycinet Peninsula, 80 kilometres from Little Swanport. Menna Jones is on another field trip, researching devil behaviour.
I was out there by myself for 2 days, and it was a very long trap line going into quite a remote area. And I wanted to catch 40 devils in 2 or 3 days. I detected these 3 cases up the very northern end, and they were horrific.
These devils are covered with devastating injuries.
Teeth falling out, jaws breaking off, tumours protruding into eye sockets. One of them we euthanased on humanitarian grounds. He had a 12 to 14 centimetre diameter tumour that was completely open and raw flesh, and it was just horrific.
What or who could have caused such injury? Jones sends the euthanized devil to the lab. It's now 5 years since Christo Bars took pictures of the first disfigured devils at Mount William. These are the first tissue and organ samples to be tested.
Thank Chris. I've got the whole spleen here. What other bits are we looking for? Brain, skin, bone marrow, and marrow.
The very first samples I sent up in 2001 They found round cells that were consistent with a soft tissue lymphoma. Soft tissue cancer.
It's given the name Devil Facial Tumor Disease, or DFTD. It's a new strain of cancer.
The fact that there was no record of this sort of disease showed us we had a new problem. Devils seem to have a new problem.
Tasmanian devils have been found with a new kind of cancer. 3 different locations, same disease. But where has this cancer suddenly come from?
All options were on the table. Nothing had been discounted. Nobody knew whether this was a cancer that had arisen due to some chemical toxin in the environment, through radiation, through a virus, or what it was. There's a wide range of possible suspects.
The idea of radiation was soon discarded, as there are no nuclear plants on Tasmania and no reports of other animals being affected. Chemicals used in the environment are a prime suspect.
A list of something like 30 or 40 chemicals was identified and agreed as being worth investigating.
Tasmania is famous for its beautiful rural landscape. Forestry and farming cover half the island, and the use of chemicals is common.
There are some chemicals that are, under some circumstances, are known carcinogens used in the environment here as pesticides or herbicides. And there's been controversy over the use of those chemicals.
The practice of extermination by poisoning is also considered. For Tasmanian farmers, the devil is a pest because it steals chickens and lambs. Tasmanian devils are protected and it's illegal to kill them, but it still happens in some areas.
People have laced the bodies of a sheep or a wallaby with strychnine to kill large numbers of Tasmanian devils.
There's cocktails of chemicals. There's not just single chemicals, there's combinations of chemicals. And in the area where this disease was first found, we know this persecution of devils has gone on.
But the area where the disease was last found is a national park. The nearest farm is too far away for illegal devil poisoning to be the cause. The cancer has been found in 3 different locations by chance, and it doesn't seem as if these locations are linked.
I was increasingly worried at how we managed to find this disease here and there by chance.
No one knows if this disease has affected devils in other parts of Tasmania. In mid-2003, Nick Mooney decides it's time to act.
We did a statewide snapshot survey. We randomised grids around the state and surveyed them as quickly as we could, because we wanted to have accurate information on what this disease meant to devil populations.
Over the next few months, Mooney surveys tens of thousands of square kilometres and sets hundreds of traps. He begins to receive information from the public.
People were starting to phone in and say, oh, I saw a sick devil, or I saw a devil and it's dead on the side of the road at such and such a place. And we found this disease in all sorts of places and rapidly started filling out the map.
The survey reveals the disease has spread over a third of Tasmania.
There must have been tens of thousands of devils dying in absolute misery. And that's a very sad state of affairs.
The survey also shows that the cancer is unlikely to be caused by chemicals, as it is found in areas where no chemicals are used in the environment.
This disease was so widespread, and it was in places where there'd been no use of these chemicals that we might be thinking about. That meant that we thought, there's something really odd about this disease.
The only common factor in every situation was that there were Tasmanian devils there, and it seemed that the disease was just spreading inexorably where there were Tasmanian devils.
This is serious. What is it? We've got to find out fast, and we've got to try and do something about it.
Nick Mooney's survey alerts Tasmania to the serious danger faced by its most iconic species.
Nick Mooney was, I believe, really heroic in the early stages of responding to the disease by making a case to the state government, to the Premier of Tasmania, that this was something that couldn't be ignored. It was something new, different, and spectacularly horrific.
7 years after the first photographs of mutant devils were taken, the Tasmanian devil hits the headlines.
Interest can almost explode overnight, and that's really what happened. Suddenly there was more interest in devils, and that quite quickly moved into politicians making decisions, the government producing money, and there we have our project off and running.
In 2003, the Tasmanian government launches an official investigation, and the Save the Devil project is born.
By the stage we get funding is now more than 7 years after the first discovery.
Immediately, a crack team is recruited to solve the mystery of the devil facial tumour disease.
We started to choose monitoring sites, get staff on, start the diagnostic work in the animal health labs. It got ramped up rapidly.
There's a sense of enormous urgency to all this. We can't get everything done fast enough, and we feel as though we're running out of time.
Tasmanian devils are being struck down by cancerous tumours. No one knows how, no one knows why. The Save the Devil campaign sets up a laboratory with new state-of-the-art equipment.
4 tumours were found, or at least 3.
And a team of experts is brought in to solve the mystery of this new strain of cancer.
It's rare that a veterinary pathologist has the opportunity to study from scratch a totally new and emerging disease.
Okay, eyes down.
They had to be thorough, they had to be rigorous, and they had to look at every possibility.
Gosh, this is an aggressive tumour.
Radiation, pest control, and chemical pollutants have been discounted.
I've been at this game for 35 years and I've never seen anything quite like this.
The next line of inquiry is whether the cancer could be caused by a virus.
In recent history in Australia, with diseases in koala bears and other native wildlife, often viruses have been found to be involved.
A virus is an infective agent whose genetic material invades cells, whereas cancer begins with a mutation of a cell's own genetic material. There is no such thing as a cancer virus, but viruses have been known to cause mutations in cells to make them more likely to become cancerous. Immunologist Dr. Greg Woods decides to test the devil's immune system, the body's first line of defense against something like a virus.
For these tumours to grow, you suspect that there must be something wrong with their immune system. Often when cancer develops, it's escaped our immune response. The Tasmanian devil, we don't understand much about their immune response. So we were stepping into the unknown, so we didn't know really what to expect. So everything was new. Did an autopsy to make sure they had all the immune organs.
And the shoulder blades.
Lymph nodes, spleen, and they had these organs in normal numbers. So they had the apparatus to induce an immune response.
Take a bit of kidney, going in the big pot.
The other important thing that we did was to do blood smears, just to make sure the devil has got all the normal immune cells present in his blood. That's good colour. And they did. They had all the normal white cells in normal numbers.
The devil's immune system looks in good shape. Now they need to see if it works. Woods injects the devil with alien blood cells to see if its immune system attacks them.
So we immunised 4 devils with red blood cells. We actually chose horse red blood cells. Injected them under the skin and looked for the antibody response. And to our surprise, not only did they produce a good immune response, they produced a fantastically high immune response. The antibodies they produced were extremely high, much higher than we expected.
Tasmanian devils need a strong immune response to survive in the wild. They are the forest cleaners, devouring carcasses littering the landscape.
When you think about it, the Tasmanian devil is going to expose a lot of bacteria, particularly as they're devouring carcasses. Also, the devils do fight quite a bit and they do cause massive wounds. If you're diving into a carcass with massive wounds, the chance of infections are very high. So you need to be able to protect yourself against these infections.
A strong immune system indicates the disease is unlikely to be a virus. But if their immune system is so strong, how are all the devils getting this cancer at the same time?
We then had to sort of explain, why does this tumour get transplanted from animal to animal? This shouldn't happen. Cancer is not contagious. You cannot catch cancer from someone else. So something unusual was happening within these Tasmanian devils.
Tasmania's Save the Devil campaign hits a roadblock. It needs help. A retired scientist, Dr. Anne-Marie Pierce, comes to the rescue after hearing about the problem on the news.
My first reaction was I was devastated, horrified, upset, distressed, and felt an incredible amount of sympathy for these animals. And I thought, I can help with this. So I rang them up and told them that I was just the very person they needed. And so they made me a job.
Pierce has unique qualifications. Not only is she a specialist in human cancer, she is also a zoologist with a history of studying Tasmanian devils.
It was serendipity. It was as though my whole life had just been getting me ready for this one thing. And I'm pretty old, so that's a lot of getting ready.
January 2004. Almost 8 years since Christo Bars took the photos of mutant devils which sparked this investigation. Three years since the discovery of a new kind of cancer. Pierce starts work.
Can't find a perfect one. Two things emerged right away, straight away when I started here. The first one was seeing the distribution of the disease around the devil's face. It was on the mouth, in the mouth, around the face. The second point was I happened to be looking at some slides of an animal who had a tumour on the lip here and another little tumour just opposite on the lower lip. It looked very much like this tumour had caused that tumour, if you like. Then one day I was taking my dog for a walk and she had an argument with another dog and they locked jaws like that. So my dog was bitten on the soft palate and I thought that could just be what happens with the devils. I said it could be transmitted just by cell implantation from devil to devil. That's unheard of. It just doesn't happen. But I didn't have any proof at that stage.
Pierce is suggesting this cancer might be contagious.
I think when Anne-Marie first talked about that possibility, for many people it was a ludicrous idea. cancers just aren't infectious.
Next, Pierce looks for clues in the chromosomes, the body's blueprint found within each cell. Cancer is a mutation of a body's own cells, which multiply unchecked. So cancer chromosomes should be identical to its host's chromosomes.
Here we go, that's not too bad. When I finally got to look at the chromosomes in the cancer, I found that they were the same in every animal I looked at. Come on.
It was almost as if these tumour cells were clones of the same cell.
Pierce's theory has no scientific precedent.
Other people were sceptical. There were people who didn't quite understand what I was saying. Some sort of blob there that's sort of,
Pierce had to be 100% certain.
Oh, look, I spent days. In the original case, I had to look at so many to convince myself that it was right.
The proof comes when she examines the chromosomes of a devil named after the famous Tasmanian Errol Flynn.
We called him Errol. We like famous Tasmanians to be the namesakes for our devils.
Errol is an unusual devil.
Let's have a look at that under high power.
Chromosomes usually come in matching pairs, but one of Errol's chromosomes is abnormal.
In other words, Errol had been born with one chromosome that wasn't right. That's a good one. So this is Errol's chromosomes. His 2 chromosomes 5 didn't match. One of them looked normal, the other one looked abnormal. So when you put them together, they didn't match up. They should always match up.
According to known scientific theory, Errol's damaged chromosome should be present in his cancer.
But when we looked at his cancer, this is what his cancer chromosomes look like. Very nasty. Lo and behold, it was exactly the same as everyone else's cancer. So that damaged or unusual chromosome wasn't in the cancer.
If Errol's damaged chromosome is not in his cancer, then his cancer could not be a mutation of his own cells.
Now that meant that there is no way his tissues could have produced that cancer. So therefore, he had caught the cancer from somebody else. That was the proof, the final proof, that it was a contagious cancer. It was the only explanation for what we were finding in the chromosomes. There was nothing else that could have caused what we were seeing.
Pierce makes history.
This discovery by Anne-Marie Pierce was quite astounding, that she was prepared to think that something that was previously almost unheard of was possible in this case.
Well, I was a little bit excited. In fact, I have been described as having been a little bit overexcited.
This is really the very first occasion where there is a very malignant cancer transmitted between animals that is life-threatening, and it does kill the devils.
The island of Tasmania has a cancer wreaking havoc throughout its most iconic species, the Tasmanian devil. It's the first fatal contagious cancer ever recorded in man or beast. But where did this cancer come from?
So these were just cells of a cancer that had grown in one devil and become transmissible. So even though the devil probably died many, many years ago, its cancer was still going in other devils.
The devil which originally had this cancer is now dead and has probably taken the secret of how it got it to its grave.
Perhaps there's a chemical that's causing this, but It's also likely that we'll never know. We don't know the reasons for most human cancers. We know how the cancer operates, but we don't actually know what caused it.
Whenever it was, and whichever it was, this devil has left a terrible legacy. And the implications of its cancer are extremely disturbing.
There are three possible outcomes from these transformations that are happening to it. The first one is that it could become less lethal. The second outcome is nasty. It could transform into a disease that is even worse. The third possible outcome is even worse. It could transform into something which would be capable of jumping from the devil into other species. Now that would be a very bad outcome indeed.
The first task is to work out how the cancer is transmitted from devil to devil.
We knew viruses weren't involved and chemicals weren't involved. It was a transmissible cancer. So then we had to start to explain why this cancer can be transmitted from devil to devil. It shouldn't happen, but it was.
Beautiful little animal.
Is it something to do with their behaviour, or could it be hereditary?
Is this disease handed on from mother to young? The obvious thing to a few of us was, well, let's get some diseased mothers with young, and we'll keep them and see what happens to the young over the next few years. A bruise on the nose, but looks perfect. She can go. Now those young are over 3 years old, and they still haven't developed a disease.
Not only is it not hereditary, young devils aren't getting the cancer at all.
You expect mortality to be much higher in juveniles than it is in adults, but this disease was going through the adult population. In the early days we didn't see any juveniles at all with the disease, and that was strange. That was really strange.
19.4.
The investigators turn their attention to adult devils.
Now we've got all threes for more eruption.
Almost certainly there had to be contact between devils or fresh devil material.
Full-grown Tasmanian devils are famous fighters. Their ferocity is legendary, particularly when it comes to food. Once these scavengers find a carcass in the forest, it's a feeding frenzy.
They've got absolutely disgusting table manners, and what they'll do is they'll fight over carcasses.
Pound for pound, Tasmanian devils have the most powerful bite in the world, designed for ripping open carcasses and crushing bones.
We've watched them fighting at carcasses, and if you've got a devil with a tumour in it, he's got this target, and it's called a big red open ulcerating tumour. So if you're going to bite the other devil, you bite that fascinating lump of raw flesh that's sticking out.
We know this cancer is very fragile, friable, bits can fall off it. So there's lots of opportunities for a devil with a big tumour to be eating. Tumour cells fall on the carcass, another devil contacts those cells, perhaps gets a cell into a cut in its mouth, and away you go.
The devils could be infecting each other at mealtimes, but this is not the full story. The cancer is spreading just as easily in areas with very few devils. So few, they're unlikely to have to fight over carcasses. This finding shifted the inquiry from feeding to breeding. Devil courtship is also very violent.
During the mating season, males will rip whole chunks of flesh off each other's cheeks. You can get areas 2-3 centimetres in diameter. So you can imagine a devil with tumour cells on its teeth. Penetrating bite inoculates tumour cells right inside the skin. About 85% of tumours are on the head, and 85% of bites are on the head. And it's mostly adult males and females. So juvenile devils are not sustaining serious skin-penetrating injuries.
The devils are injecting each other with cancer through their biting. Sex and food, the fundamentals of life, are instruments of death.
Once the devil is infected, it's got the disease and it can't get rid of it, and it will die from the disease within 12 months, usually within 3 months.
But if this cancer is so contagious, why is it caught only by devils? No other species has been found with the disease. There must be a missing link.
What is it about devils that their immune system doesn't seem to recognise these cells from another devil?
And that's the really important question with this disease, is why does not the devil's immune system recognise it as non-you?
The answer lies in history. Tasmania's isolation is both a blessing and a curse. On the Australian mainland, the devil is believed to have been wiped out by dingoes over 400 years ago. The island is the last devil outpost. But for over a century, devils were hunted and poisoned by farmers.
Most Tasmanians had a very poor attitude to devils. Most Tasmanians couldn't care less if they died out. Not a very positive attitude at all.
By the 1930s, their numbers had fallen to a dangerously low level, and killing devils was outlawed in 1941.
Now, when they started to build up again, because they started with a very low number of devils, we obviously got quite a lot of inbreeding.
It's a very inbred population, and that this has made them more susceptible to the kind of disease that we've seen appear.
Inbreeding means devils are genetically alike, so their immune systems recognize the infectious cancer cells as their own cells and don't fight them. If the devils were more genetically dissimilar, the cancer cells would appear to be alien, and their immune systems would respond.
Most of the devils here are very closely related, so the wrong disease can go right through the population, and that's what we're seeing.
It's like having an invader into an army who's wearing the same uniform, just invades quite easily. It's not detected.
The mystery of the mutant devils is solved. The aggressive nature of the devil is to blame for the spread of the cancer. Inbreeding is the reason that the disease is not rejected by the devil's immune system. And the cancer's rigorous nature is the cause of their rapid demise.
And this disease was just waiting in the wings. It was out there. And we were able to have an epidemic. That's the epidemic of DFTD.
Devil's facial tumour disease has now spread over 2/3 of the island. Overall numbers have dropped from over 100,000 down to 30,000. In some places, devil numbers are down 90%.
We have to expect the worst can happen. An island is a very finite place, and extinctions have a very nasty habit of occurring on islands, and we don't want to be part of an extinction here. We are facing the prospect of this magnificent animal going extinct.
The ultimate challenge is next: how to save the devil. The investigators have solved the mystery of devil's facial tumour disease. They have made history, discovering the world's first contagious fatal cancer. But the case is far from closed.
There's a great public expectation that, given all the interest, we'll find a cure for this or something, but we always remind people of how many cures do we know for human cancers.
The devil's future is in the balance.
How long has the devil got until it becomes extinct in the wild in Tasmania? The best estimates at the moment are something between 15 and 25 years if current trends continue.
Thinking we'll find a cure to this within the time frame we need to is highly unlikely.
With no cure in sight, the focus turns to saving the Tasmanian devil before cancer wipes out the species. Scientific officer Billy Lazenby works in the field, monitoring the steady march of the disease across the island. She is a first-hand witness to the horror.
There's nothing there to stop it wiping out the entire population. Oh wow, this guy's massive. So we'll have a look at his face now. Doesn't look too good. If we have a close look in here and lift the lip up, we can actually see that the tumour is ulcerated and open. It's quite horrific, the impact that this disease has on populations. We're probably not going to get some fantastic cure just dropped from the sky overnight. The guy's a little bit apprehensive to leave his sack. So the devils that we observe with the disease, you know, within 3 to 5 months of showing the first tiny initial little signs, they will have disappeared from the population. So the end is always the same. They die from it. I'd like to say it's good to release a devil, but unfortunately I don't think his prospects are that good, so we'll see how he goes. The only sort of real active forms of managing this disease are bringing in disease-free devils from the wild and keeping them in quarantined captivity, or attempting to suppress the disease by removing all of the diseased devils from within an enclosed population.
The Save the Devil campaign invests in an environmental insurance policy. To prevent the devil from becoming extinct, they need a population of healthy animals.
Isn't he gorgeous?
Once we discovered this disease was 100% mortality, we thought if things go really badly here, we're going to have to reconstruct this population at some stage in the future, because wild devils are only in Tasmania and we really only get one shot at doing this right.
Firstly, the team creates a sufficient supply of disease-free devils in captivity. Seemingly healthy devils are put in quarantine for 2 years to ensure they don't develop the disease. Then they're sent out of the danger zone and into secure places such as zoos on mainland Australia.
Our nightmare was to send perhaps the last healthy devils from Tasmania to the mainland and then find that one of them was diseased and the disease was spread into that captive population.
But no one wants to see the last Tasmanian devils behind bars in a zoo. Captive animals are only half the answer.
Our next phase was to see if we could do anything about the disease in wild populations.
Menna Jones has an ambitious plan: to establish a population of healthy devils and keep them quarantined in the wild.
Disease management is all about breaking the transmission cycle. We've got to break transmission from devil to devil.
She chooses an isolated peninsula in the southeast, linked to the mainland only by a bridge. This is the best chance of keeping the healthy devils in and the diseased devils out.
Look, at the moment, I just desperately hope we can make it work. At the moment, it's our only tool for managing the disease in wild populations.
Here's 10.2.
Ecologist Christine Puck has the task of weeding out the diseased devils on the peninsula.
Okay, let's have a look at your sexy end, eh?
She's trying to artificially engineer a survival of the fittest.
Sometimes you find tumours around the lips here, up under the gums. You get the gingival tumours, which are quite red, look like one of those raspberry lollies.
But sometimes it feels she's fighting a losing battle. The number of diseased devils she finds is increasing.
First day trapping back here, there was 13 animals sitting there waiting for the vet to turn up. And that was more than I'd pulled out in the whole year prior to that.
It's also her job to take the diseased devils to be euthanized.
That long, slow journey in the back of the car to meet the vet, it's horrible. It's tough because you feel like you're breaking their trust. You know, they're such gentle creatures to work with. I'll die anyway, you know, it's a mercy killing, I suppose.
The quarantine programs are desperate last measures, and there are no guarantees.
This disease, I believe, could cause extinction of the species because there is a certain point in a population of any animals where if it gets below that, it can't recover.
By 2007, the cancer has crept over most of the island except the west coast. It may only be a matter of time before the devils in the west succumb to the fatal disease.
Can we halt the spread of the disease across the landscape? And I think the answer is realistically no, not even if we had $1 million. Not even if we had $20 million, we probably couldn't do it.
It is a new disease. The investigators need new solutions. In 2007, immunologist Greg Woods begins a new line of inquiry. If the reason the cancer can jump between devils is their genetic similarity, he needs to find a devil with a genetic difference.
And what was discovered was that the devils within the eastern half of Tasmania, their genes involved in the immune response are very, very similar, whereas in the western half, they're slightly different.
Woods takes a healthy devil born in quarantine from the western half of the island. He calls him Cedric. He injects Cedric with devil facial tumor disease cells to see how his immune system reacts.
Okay, that's done. And what we found was that Cedric produced an antibody response to the tumour. This was the very first indication that a devil could produce an immune response against DFTD. We had to look at it 2 or 3 times to make sure it was true. And it was true. The antibody was produced. So Cedric has produced an immune response, which indicates that there are devils out there which have the potential to respond to the tumour. Because Cedric came from the northwest, their genes just happened to be just enough different to induce an immune response. Cedric is our ray of hope.
In 1996, a photograph changes the course of history. 10 years later, a scientist reveals that the Tasmanian devils have the world's first fatal transmissible cancer. Over that decade, the Tasmanian devil population has been decimated. The future of the species is in the balance. But if there are more devils out there like Cedric, then it might be possible to breed a whole new generation of cancer-resistant Tasmanian devils.
A city street in Asia. Police are baffled by a gruesome scene. A dead body lies on the back of a truck. A massive exit wound reveals muscles torn to shreds. Stunned bystanders cannot believe what they are seeing. All they know is that a whale has exploded in a street. Taiwan, an island 200 miles east of China. On the southern coast of the island lies the city of Tainan. January the 26th, 2004, 6:30 a.m. and the city is just waking up. On Ximen Road, a supermarket prepares for another busy day. Just outside, a man rests after a big night out. A truck driver makes his way through the city streets, carrying an unusual load. A dead sperm whale weighing over 50 tons, which was washed up on the coast 48 hours ago. This massive cargo is being taken to the city's university for scientific analysis. But the journey is cut short by an unimaginable event. Large parts of intestine, chunks of blubber, and gallons of blood have exploded out of the sperm whale. One of the first to see the carnage is marine biologist Professor Wang Jiangping. Revisiting the scene 4 years later, he remembers all the gory details.
I get off the car and go to the truck. And I find the sperm whale broken, some intestine hanging in the body, and blood flowing in the ground. Every whale have blood. White car became red color. We find 3-part intestine on the ground.
People on the street look on in disbelief.
Blood.
It was spreading those organs like a disaster or a big murders happening here.
It's just like a horror movie. This whole window is blood.
Most amazing thing I saw was all these blood and guts drawing along the road, really red, bloody mess.
Eyewitnesses are overwhelmed by the stench of rotting flesh.
I would never forget the smell in my lifetime.
The smell very disgusting.
It's like tons of fishes death on the road. Tons of fishes. Yeah.
Local news cameras quickly arrive on the scene, capturing surreal images. Journalist Jason Pan realizes the incident is big news and breaks the story around the world on the internet.
To me, still, this is the biggest story I was ever involved in. Bigger than the soccer championship, baseball championship, or visit of some big president in Taiwan. I knew it was very interesting news because I never seen a whale on land. Usually it's near beach. And the fact it exploded, it was something really interesting. I think it was kind of funny, also in a macabre way.
The scale of the carnage leads some people to fear the worst.
People saying, well, whale exploded. What is this, like a terrorist bomb, like whale exploding? Is Taiwan developing some kind of, biological bomb, weapon of whale mass destruction? There have been a lot of website discussion how, U.S. State Department should check out Taiwan. They're developing some kind of biological bomb about it.
While talk of conspiracy spreads on the web, Professor Wang concentrates on gathering the whale's remains. He is still determined to carry out a necropsy or animal autopsy and preserve the skeleton for his museum. His dedication impresses Professor Liang Shangshu, director of Taiwan's National Whale Stranding Network.
I was very proud of the response of Professor Wang, because for most people they think, oh, stinging, oh, terrible, messy, ugly or yuck. But Professor Wang tell everybody, oh, help me, try to collect all the intestine back. That's my treasure. What he care about is his specimen, those the dirty and messy intestine he want to collect back.
Wang's priority is retrieving as much of his whale as possible. The city's priority is limiting a potential health hazard. As a massive cleanup begins, the press follow the whale to its final destination, miles away from Ximen Road, and photographers capture more gruesome images. A makeshift canopy is erected over the whale, since no building on the site is big enough to house a creature of this size. Just hours after the explosion, a team of scientists and volunteers begin their daunting challenge.
We use 60 people and 10 days to dissect the sperm whale.
The scale of their task is immense. Tons of blubber are peeled away, revealing layers of tough muscle. Massive organs like the heart are removed for laboratory analysis. Giant intestines are laid out near to the whale's body. Curious onlookers flock to see this gory and unforgettable scene.
This sperm whale became very, very famous.
The sperm whale's skeleton is now a popular tourist attraction, and the explosion is now part of Taiwanese folklore. Yet the chain of events behind this extraordinary incident remained a mystery. Until now. A team of international experts have been gathered to find an explanation. They're looking for a clue in this video archive, some of which has never been seen outside Taiwan, all searching for a piece of lurking evidence, a key to unlocking what could possibly be the trigger behind the whale exploding in the street. Liverpool, England. Veterinary pathologist Julian Chantry looks at the grisly aftermath of the explosion.
It's incredible, yeah, it really is. You just wouldn't have expected that to happen.
Chantry is certain that the force and sheer energy behind the explosion are due to internal decomposition.
Decomposition is when the body is starting to break down. So there's no longer any blood supply, and organs and tissues are starting to just break apart, to degenerate.
Decomposition begins as soon as any animal dies. The lack of blood carrying oxygen around the body causes organs and tissues to start breaking down. As the body starts to decay, bacteria present in the gut escape and spread into the abdomen. These bacteria release toxins and accelerate the degeneration of the body proteins, which generate gases. As these volatile gases increase, they create pressure in the abdomen, causing the body to expand. To demonstrate the effects of decomposition, Chantry carries out a necropsy on a farm pig that has died of natural causes. It may be smaller than a sperm whale, but the manner in which animals decompose is essentially the same in all species.
So we've got this pig and it's died 3 days ago, and since then it's been rotting. The skin is becoming discoloured because you've got an escape of bacteria. They're spreading away from the gut then into the surrounding tissues and creating this green-blue coloration of the skin. As a byproduct, they're giving off gas as well.
The gas produced internally will continue to expand, looking for a place to escape.
Now, can you hear the gas coming there? That's where I've gone through into the abdomen.
The biochemical reactions that produce the gas are at work in all of the pig's organs, especially the stomach and intestines.
You heard the release of gas there. And this is a very small-scale model of how it would be in the whale. Obviously, the whale is many hundreds of times bigger, and the pressure build-up will be correspondingly greater.
There would undoubtedly have been a build-up of gases inside the sperm whale. But is this natural process capable of causing such destruction? The whale's body parts strewn across the road tell a story of a violent explosion. Something must have detonated it, but what was the trigger? There must be more to this mystery than decomposition. Other factors never before investigated that help explain why the sperm whale blew up in Taiwan. The mystery of a giant sperm whale that blew up in a street in Taiwan has never been fully explained. Bruce Mate has studied marine mammals for 35 years and has witnessed firsthand the explosive energy that dead sperm whales can contain. In 1979, Mate was called to help remove a dead sperm whale that had washed up on an Oregon beach.
This is the scene of relieving pressure from an animal that's just died a few hours earlier but had been on the beach for several days alive. And just immediately after dying, I sent people out to cut the animals open so we didn't have exploding whales. And here they're taking their first slices with flensing knives, and immediately after that they turn to run because this is not the first animal they've done. And you can see the stretch marks here by the cuts. This wound is tearing this initial cut, but there's such strength in the animal's layers that it yet hasn't gone through into the peritoneal cavity. The muscles are tearing, and then finally it gets into the peritoneum where the pressure is, and kaboom, out comes all the guts and feathers, so to speak. You can see the blood mass ahead of everything else, the liquids, and then the solids behind that of the intestines and the organs.
The sperm whale in Oregon was less than half the size of the giant sperm whale that blew up in Taiwan. Parts of blubber were found streets away, suggesting a ferocious amount of pent-up energy. To estimate the amount of force required to blow up such a huge whale, British explosives expert Terry Thompson reviews the footage of the bloody aftermath.
This incredible event involved a rupturing of the sperm whale's abdomen, which caused material from the sperm whale to be projected quite a large distance. For instance, here, you might just be able to make out a mass of material just adjacent next to this car here. That car is about 30 metres from the sperm whale. So for that to have been projected 30 metres indicates to me just how volatile an event this was. My estimation of this would be, it would be the equivalent to between 2 to 5 pounds of TNT equivalent explosives would have caused similar damage.
To test his theory, Thompson is using 4 pounds of dynamite to simulate the blast.
We are going to detonate in the middle of a huge mound of peat. It will produce a tamping effect on the explosive.
The peat bags are approximately the same size and weight of the body parts that were thrown across the street in Taiwan. If the peat bags are thrown a similar distance and some remain intact, then the experiment will have been successful.
Right. 3, 2, 1, fire.
Good. We can see from here there are still quite a few full bags lying about. I can see a kidney there. You know, it's quite easy to imagine that that's, you know, part of the whale's intestines. And similarly with all these other bags here.
Thompson's estimation looks accurate. The heavy peat bags are thrown a similar distance to the whale's guts.
I think that's as near a representation of what took place in Taiwan as we could have possibly hoped to achieve.
The blast required was 2 kilos of dynamite, the equivalent of 30 hand grenades.
If anybody had been unlucky enough to be standing immediately adjacent to the vehicle when that happened, they would have suffered quite serious injury, perhaps even death.
To test his theory, Thompson puts 2 mannequins in the firing line. Once again, he uses 4 pounds of dynamite.
3, 2, 1, fire.
Well, we've lost 1 mannequin. Blast often is enough to seriously injure or kill people. And at that distance from the explosion, certainly would have suffered ill effects.
But how can a mammal contain such a huge amount of potentially lethal energy? The sperm whale is an animal of extremes, uniquely adapted to resist massive amounts of external pressure exerted by the crushing depths where it dives for its food. Underwater, the planet's biggest predator can dive to 3,000 meters in search of deep-water squid, way beyond the range of many military submarines. The human body would be crushed to a bloody pulp at a fraction of that depth. But as an evolutionary byproduct, the very physique that keeps the crushing pressures out also keeps mounting internal pressure in.
The same tissues that prevent them from being squashed from external pressure are the pressures that hold in this decomposition of gases. And when they're relieved quickly, it can be quite explosive.
Given the exceptional tensile strength of the sperm whale, something must have weakened its almost indestructible exterior. The evidence shows that the vast amount of gore was jettisoned from the back of the whale. But this area is not commonly seen as a vulnerable part of the sperm whale's anatomy, adding to the mystery of why this whale exploded in the street. Marine scientists Paul Collins and Francis Gullen study video footage of a giant sperm whale that exploded in a street in Taiwan. They are both intrigued by the location of the giant exit wound.
And it's interesting, the break occurred almost along the center of the spine, the back, which is a very unusual spot for it to break and blow open.
That's where you've got the backbone and a lot of musculature that holds all the organs in. So if the animal was completely intact and going to explode, you usually would see it blowing out of the belly, where there's more pressure from the guts, and it's a weaker body wall, or out of the mouth.
You'd expect the weak point to be on the abdominal side of the animal. So something had happened in the tissue here to create a soft spot or a weak spot.
So I'm assuming there must have been something that compromised the back of the animal there.
So what could have possibly damaged this section of the sperm whale? The experts look at video footage captured 48 hours before the explosion, when a strange object is spotted in the water near an oyster farm 50 miles north of Tainan. It is a gigantic sperm whale, and it appears to be alive. Fishermen see its tail, known as the fluke, moving in the water.
The coordinator of Taiwan Sea Tissue Society, she got a phone call in the early morning, and the people told her this whale, the fluke, still flapping. Okay, that's the message she reported to me. So I thought, oh, okay, and what can we do? It's so big.
The whale becomes an urgent priority, and Professor Wang is in charge.
When I hear the news, I'm excited and surprised. A big sperm whale stranded in Taiwan.
Wang heads up a whale rescue team. But when they arrive at the scene, they discover the whale is dead. There are no obvious signs of the cause of death, and the carcass looks relatively fresh.
The skin is intact on this animal. You don't see any large white splotches on the surface of the animal, which would be indicative of the animal having floated for a while before it washed in, and the skin beginning to slough off the surface of the blubber.
In the water, the dorsal hump section from where the guts and blubber exploded looks intact, suggesting the damage may have occurred after the sperm whale died. This is no longer a rescue, but still an exciting opportunity to discover more about the physiology of sperm whales. Professor Wang must decide what to do with this giant specimen.
It was the biggest sperm whale I ever seen.
Wang is given the green light to retrieve the whale from the water, carry out a full post-mortem, known as a necropsy, and preserve the skeleton at the University Museum in Tainan. This whale's death is a rare opportunity to learn about one of the planet's most impressive creatures.
Sperm whales are probably one of the most mysterious animals on Earth. They live at depths of down to a mile deep. They swim for over 45 minutes on a single breath. On average, they come up and take 7 to 10 minutes to recharge their oxygen debt. They're feeding on deep water squids in virtual total darkness, so there's a lot of great mystique about sperm whales.
Sperm whales are giants of the sea, the largest predators on the planet. They reach lengths of over 60 feet and weigh up to 60 tons. Their brains are the largest of any animal on Earth. Sperm whales are found in every ocean in the world, yet their trademark fluke, waving on the surface of the water before they dive, is rarely seen. So, the opportunity to study one of these incredible mammals is exceptional. But getting this huge sperm whale out of the water is a logistical headache for Professor Wang and his team, requiring delicate handling and heavy lifting equipment. Responding to large stranded whales is a problem around the world. Marine scientists Paul Collins and Francis Gulland have worked extensively with stranded marine mammals off the coast of California.
Every time you have a dead whale, it's always a problem to figure out where are you going to necropsy it, how are you going to cut it up, what are the logistics. I think all of us that work on large dead whales, we're always so interested in the animal itself and finding out why it died, in looking at all the extraordinary organs and massive heart, that you get caught up in it, and so you're excited, interested, usually working against time, so you don't think about how hard it is. It's only the next day when you wake up in the morning and you can't actually move that you realise that it was hard work.
Our excitement level goes up if it's something that we haven't seen before, or if it would make a great addition to our research collection or for possible public display. Yeah, definitely the excitement goes up. And you do whatever you have to do in order to try to retrieve the animal or retrieve the material out of the animal. In some cases, it's carving it up and harvesting the material right there on the beach. In other cases, you can't do it on the beach. You have to bring the carcass back to where you can work on it.
It is hard enough performing a necropsy on a beach and then removing the body parts. But in Taiwan, the sperm whale was stranded in an ocean oyster farm, an impossible location for scientific research. Wang has no choice but to hoist the whale out of the water and transport it to his university in Tainan City. But could this difficult procedure have backfired on the professor, damaging the dorsal hump, creating a weak point which will be ripped apart in less than 24 hours' time? Paul Collins examines the sperm whale being lifted by its fluke.
If you lift it by the tail stalk, that's a huge amount of weight on the whole vertebral column. That can potentially cause additional breakdown of tissue and bones and other things internally. It may begin to rip and tear muscle, might even begin to rip and tear some of the fibers within the blubber layer, and that may be potentially a contributing factor to that point at which it broke.
Out of the water, the whale is no longer weightless, and the chains around the fluke strain to support its 56-ton mass. This puts massive stress on the vertebrae, right by the dorsal hump, stretching the skin and the blubber to what could have been breaking point. The whale is too heavy for the cranes, and eventually, this lift is called off.
We use 2 40-ton cranes to lift the sperm whale, but in fail because the sperm whale too heavy. So we change another 120-ton crane.
13 hours since the recovery operation began, the greater lifting capacity of these giant cranes is finally successful.
When the sperm whale lift out the water, we are really happy.
And the sheer size of this magnificent animal can now be fully appreciated.
Sometimes it's hard to tell people, how big. If you tell, oh, the whale is 10 meters, 12 meters, people say, oh, yeah. But once you get close to that creature, you just feel, you compare how little you are and how big is the whale. And then I think most people, they will have some special feeling.
And it is suddenly clear to Professor Wang why it was proving so hard to lift.
When the sperm whale in water, most body under the water, I image just 20 tons. But after we leave it out, we find it more than 50 tons.
This sperm whale is the biggest one in Taiwan ever stranded.
The subsequent attempts to lift the whale could have put even more stress on the dorsal hump area. And the positioning of the cable wrapped near the tail section of the whale could also be a key culprit.
Oh, here's the photo that really tells the story. There are two cranes and there are only two wires suspending the animal. You can see the forward cables cutting into the head quite a bit, but there's no pressure there. You really have to get back into the area where there's a body cavity. But the other cable is suspended exactly where the blowout occurred.
Mate believes these cables could be responsible for the weak spot on the lower part of the sperm whale's spine.
These are the vertebrae of a minke whale, but it demonstrates the point that you have these processes that the muscles attach to in the back. And when a cable goes around an animal is cinched down tightly, there's the opportunity for it to come down between the vertebral elements and cut through some of the important integument that might make that a likely place for pressure to leave the body. And particularly at the back of the animal, behind the dorsal hump, where it's already the thinnest part of the body, damage to this area from the cable lifting and the original lift at the wharf may have been what made that area weak to blow out in the back. They had a hold of a time bomb.
Could these cables have caused enough stress on the dorsal hump to trigger the bloody events on Ximen Road? Or are there more pieces in the puzzle causing this enormous creature to blow up in the street? A team of experts pore over video footage of a 50-ton sperm whale that blew up in a street in Asia, attempting to solve the mystery of what caused the explosion. At this point in the investigation, the cable cutting into the lower spine is the main suspect. But now the whale is out of the ocean and no longer in the cooling waters. Other factors need to be explored. The sperm whale is being subjected to external heat, allowing the temperature inside to rise and bacteria to spread. A combination advancing tissue breakdown.
Now, instead of having the water cooling the outside part of the animal, potentially keeping a little bit of the temperature down internally, it's sitting out exposed to the temperatures that are out in the air, which is going to increase that temperature on the outside and allow kind of that decomposition process to also probably increase slightly.
Evidence that decomposing gases are creating a buildup of internal pressure is apparent in this photograph.
As a whale decomposes, those gases build up and they're looking for a way out. And the easiest place to look at that is usually in the genital slit area. So the pressure from inside will push all the parts of the genitals out. So in a male, you get a massive extruding of the penis. In the females, the nipples start to spread out and the whole area becomes very swollen.
At some point during the lift, the whale's penis became exposed, forced out of the genital slit that normally acts as a protective sheath to streamline the whale underwater. On the first lift, the genital slit remains closed. But here, hours later, after the final lift, the 5-foot penis is fully exposed.
You know, those are kind of red flags that you want to pay attention to when you have a large whale carcass, and to worry about if you're going to be moving it around or keeping it out of the water for an extended period of time.
But few realize this is a warning sign. For the masses who turned out to see this monster from the deep, the penis became the main attraction.
It's very big, large, and local people were very fascinated. And some went and tried to touch it. Many men, they look at it, they say, wow, 这真厉害, 这很厉害. They say, wow, this is amazing, this is impressive. They've never seen anything like it. Because in Taiwan, Chinese mythology, you know, like dog, deer, seal penis is aphrodisiac, and They wouldn't think of eating it. They just say this is the biggest male thing they ever seen in their lives. So they want to come close and touch it.
A flatbed truck is hired to transport the whale to nearby Cheng Kung University in Taiwan for a full necropsy. But once again, the whale's immense size proves overwhelming.
When we put the sperm-whale in the truck, it's too small, so the truck crash. So we change a big one, 100-ton truck.
By the time a bigger truck arrives, Wang's team has to work in darkness. The difficult job of securing the whale onto the flatbed may have contributed to the buildup of pressure inside the whale.
Tying an animal down firmly in order to hold it on a truck definitely puts a lot more tension and pressure on that overlying blubber layer, forcing down pressure onto the internal thoracic and abdominal cavities, which the pressure just builds in a less amount of space. It's going to get higher and higher tension underneath that, and is eventually going to blow.
The cables themselves, used to strap down the whale on the flatbed, could possibly have compromised the tail section.
I'm going to guess that when they ratcheted the cables down to hold the animal, that the one that was farthest to the back on the truck, or just the weight of the flukes moving around at the back of the truck, caused a break through in one of the thinnest areas to the peritoneum, the inner body cavity, and that made it a thinner escape area for pressure.
The whale is held overnight outside a Coast Guard inspection station because of the late hour. Inside, an associate of Professor Wang, Mr. Lin, and the truck driver are resting. But their break will be short-lived.
We heard a swah. So the Coast Guard on duty and the driver and me go out to find what happened.
Wow, 怎么都是血呀？
对，刚才到门街了那了。On the surface, there is a blood with water sprayed like a fan-like, and distributed very evenly. And we realize the blood and water come from the blowhole.
This eruption of blood from the blowhole is another piece of evidence, proof that inside the whale, decomposition is in an advanced state.
The bloody water that came out of the whale's blowhole was probably due to the pressure squeezing the lungs. The lungs are a very vascular organ, lots of small blood vessels, which would be breaking down, and the blood within them would be just becoming loose. And the pressure may have led to some of this degenerating blood being blown out of the blowhole.
In the whale, decomposition accelerates like a runaway train. The faster internal tissues and organs deteriorate, the faster bacteria spread, breaking down the body's proteins and generating even more gas, increasing the pressure in the abdomen and intestines. As this pressure builds, all the energy searches for an escape. Just like the penis, the release of body fluid from the blowhole is a warning sign. The blood forced out of the blowhole makes Professor Wang realize his precious cargo is increasingly volatile and needs to be taken to his laboratory as soon as possible.
I worry about moving the sperm whale, but we had to do it.
Wang needs to get through the city while it is quiet and cool, but his plan is thwarted. His immense cargo cannot be accommodated at his university. Plan B entails hauling the massive animal to a conservation area on the opposite side of the city. It's now daylight, and the temperature rises. The whale is at breaking point. The pressure within has risen to an astonishing level. And at Shimon Road, Professor Wang runs out of time. These extraordinary images of the exploding whale seem to be a result of a bizarre chain reaction. The damage to the tail section of the whale, being out of the cool water, allowing internal temperature to rise. The cables strapping down the whale, adding even more stress to the dorsal hump. This seems to be an open and shut case, until a new scientist joins the investigation. An expert with a brand new brief that has not yet been considered. Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History, California. Whales stranding coordinator Michelle Berman studies the exit wound and blood on the street. These images may well suggest that the explosion is due to an event at sea before the whale was first spotted.
It is very suspicious to me that you have this deep, dark tissue completely adjacent to this very healthy pink tissue. It looks like it's probably a hematoma filled with blood from an injury.
A hematoma or bruising suggests the whale received an impact injury before it was lifted out of the water.
If I didn't see the clean pink muscle tissue around it, I wouldn't be so suspicious. I would just say, oh, it looks like degradation and decomposition. But given that you can see the pink tissue around it and then you have that deep, dark purple tissue just below it, it has the appearance of some kind of trauma occurring in that spot. And then also in the foreground here, you can see this area, which appears to be coagulated blood. It almost looks like little grapes inside here.
Coagulated blood forms when the body tries to prevent hemorrhaging from some sort of trauma. Both bruising and coagulation only occur when blood is flowing through the body. In other words, when the animal is alive. But what could inflict such a huge trauma to the biggest predator on the planet? The investigation into why the whale exploded has a new theory. Trauma, inflicted while the mammal was still alive. In the ocean, a sperm whale as big as this has no natural predators. But they, like all whales, can suffer fatal injury inflicted by commercial shipping vessels.
Most of these large tanker ships now have a very large bulbous metal projection off the bow of the ship that actually rides underneath the water. If a whale's in front of the ship at the time that the ship comes through, basically it's like a large battering ram just slamming right into the side of the animal.
Ventura County, California, 2007. A blue whale washes up dead. Michelle Berman coordinates a team sent to perform a necropsy. The cause of death is ship strike. The photos of the blue whale's tissue damage are similar to photos taken of the exploding sperm whale in Taiwan.
This shows inside the body cavity, just to orient you. These are 4 of the broken rib bones sticking up here. The point of impact is probably directly on this area. The bow of the boat probably hit directly here, and you can see this darkened, deep, dark purple tissue. Looks very similar to the muscle tissue hanging off of the sperm whale. all an indication of trauma to that area. And down in the base here, you can see all of this coagulated blood, very similar in appearance to the blood of the sperm whale that was on the streets.
The similarities in the two injuries are striking. But of all the marine mammals, sperm whales have a capacity to avoid ship strike.
Sperm whales, more than most other species, make their living with their ears. They are very acoustically aware animals, and their sonar signals are broad-banded, and they're listening to all kinds of frequencies and delay responses in order to visualize their environment and hunt successfully.
No matter how good their hearing, sperm whales may at times be less aware. New evidence suggests sperm whales are at risk recuperating on the surface of the ocean after a deep dive. Dr. Luke Rendell captured these extraordinary images while studying sperm whales off the coast of Chile.
The first phase of this footage shows what a sperm whale normally does when it's alert. As we get close alongside the boat, this whale reacts. There it goes. It does what we call a banana. Bends its body like that in preparation for moving around.
Rendell's theory, backed up by these images, is that sperm whales sometimes sleep after deep dives.
These guys coming into shot now don't respond at all. And you can see some of the animals are vertical, hanging vertically in the water. This is the characteristic posture of what we think they're doing is basically sleeping. So obviously they're very vulnerable to being struck during that time.
This behavior has never been documented before and provides evidence that a ship could easily hit a sperm whale. The world's oceans are busier than ever with boat traffic, meaning that marine mammals are increasingly vulnerable.
They're simply feeding in the shipping lane. So it'd be like you sitting eating a hamburger in the middle of a motorway.
When a ship's moving forward, the noise of the ship's at the back, and the ship itself forms an acoustic shadow ahead of it. So it's less likely that a whale is going to hear the ship if it's right on the front beam of the oncoming ship.
If you're in an area of high shipping, you get this kind of acoustic fog, which is just all the noise that the various ships that are putting in. Trying to pick out an individual source, an individual ship during that time, it would be very, very difficult.
The Tainan sperm whale was found near some of the busiest shipping lanes in the South China Sea, and during the sperm whale's necropsy, Professor Wang found evidence supporting the ship strike theory.
I find the bone protect the spinal cord is broken. I think maybe something big crush it.
The ship strike theory sheds new light on the mystery of why the sperm whale blew up in the street. A blunt blow from a bow of a ship to the back of the animal would have caused severe internal trauma, causing a weak point in the dorsal hump area without any signs of external damage. The discoloration of the muscles and tissues in this section is very similar to the confirmed ship strikes of blue whales in California. Combined with the recovery operation, cables cutting into the dorsal hump area, and cables strapping down the whale too tightly on the flatbed truck would have made this weak point even more vulnerable. A ship strike at sea seems to be the main culprit, but all these components are accomplices, triggering this bizarre and extraordinary explosion that the people of Taiwan and Professor Wang will never forget.